Hey guys, tonight we slide into the sun-scorched sandals of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh living a life so intense it makes modern dramas look like a snooze. Picture this. You're sprawled on a gilded bed, the Nile's muggy breath slipping through papyrus curtains, while servants murmur prayers to keep evil spirits from your dreams. The air's heavy with myrrh, and a jackal's howl cuts the night like it's got your name. Being pharaoh isn't just ruling, it's juggling godhood, romance, and betrayal, all while dodging a poisoned cup. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this gig, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I love knowing where you're chilling. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake at dawn, the horizon blazing red like a cosmic warning. Your chamber carved from limestone feels more crypt than bedroom its walls, etched with spells to shield your soul. At 14, you're no regular kid. You're Horus, reborn, Egypt's divine king. Servants swarm, eyes fixed on the floor, offering linen robes, so fine they glide like a breeze. You're not just dressing, you're armoring up to prove your godhood. Their murmurs hum like bees. The two lands depend on you. No pressure, huh? You smirk, thinking even gods must deal with morning breath. Your first task is the sunrise ritual at the temple of Amun-Ra. Barefoot, you trudge over cool stone, the priest's chants vibrating in your bones. They anoint you with oils, smelling of desert blooms, muttering about cosmic balance. Mainstream history tells us pharaohs were living deities, their every act tying Egypt to the god's will. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some priests mixed crushed crocodile-dung into sacred ointments, believing it scared off evil spirits. You sniff the oil hoping that's not today's blend. Historians still argue whether these rituals were pure theater, or if pharaohs truly believed their divine status. You're not sure, but doubt's a dangerous game here. Outside the palace buzzes with tension. Noble scribes and fan-bearers hover waiting for your nod, their loyalty as flimsy as a reed in a storm. Your mother, the great royal wife, lingers nearby, her coal-lined eyes sharp with ambition. She's your ally for now. You're barely a teen, yet they expect you to command like a warlord. Breakfast is honeyed bread, figs, and dates, but you eat fast. A slow pharaoh's a dead one. You quip to a servant about needing a divine coffee, but his nervous laugh says, humor's risky when you're a god. By mid-morning, you're swamped with decisions. A vizier, sweat dripping, drones about grain shortages, his scroll trembling. You nod sagely, channeling every kingly statue you've seen, but inside, you're scrambling. The Nile's flood was weak this year, bad for crops, worse for your reputation. You suggest opening reserve granaries, a move historians note pharaohs like Amenhotep III used to quell unrest. The vizier bows, but his eyes flicker with something sly. Trust is scarcer than shade in this place. Back at the temple by noon, you offer gold to Amun-Ra's statue. Its blank eyes seem to judge you, and you wonder if gods get migraines. A priest hands you a lotus flower, its petals wilting in the heat, and you toss it into a brazier. The smoke curls upward, carrying your prayers, or maybe just your exhaustion. You joke about needing a god of naps, but the priest's glare shuts you up. Lesson learned, divine kings don't kid about siestas. The throne room's next, where sunlight filters through alabaster panels, painting the floor in golden streaks. Your throne carved with falcons and cobras feels like a trap. Courtiers bow low their whispers, a constant drone. But you catch the edge in their tones. Everyone's playing a game, and you're the prize. A scribe reads a petition about irrigation disputes in a distant gnome. You nod, acting like you've got it handled, but your mind's racing. One misstep, and the nobles will pounce like hyenas. You think back to that crocodile-dung ointment gross, but maybe it's the least of your problems. The priest's influence is growing their rituals feeling like shackles. You're supposed to be a god, but you're starting to feel like a pawn. The vizier's earlier glance nags at you. Was it greed or something darker? You shove the thought aside, focusing on the scribe's monotone. Rule in Egypt means never letting them see you falter, even when the heat's suffocating. As you leave the throne room, a breeze carries the Nile's earthy scent, a fleeting glimpse of the world beyond these walls. You pause, watching fishermen haul nets in the distance, their lives so simple. For a second, you envy them. Then a servant clears his throat, and you're yanked back to being Horus, back to the grind of divinity. You mutter a joke about trading your crown for a fishing pole, but no one hears. Probably for the best. Gods don't get to dream of freedom. The weight of Egypt's expectations presses like a stone slab, and it's not even lunchtime. Every step, every word is a performance to keep the two lands from crumbling. You're not just a ruler, you're a myth, and myths don't get to rest. Leaving the temple earlier, a child handed you a clay amulet, her eyes wide with awe. You smiled, tucking it into your belt, but you can't shake the feeling that even she expects you to be more than human. The amulet's still there, a small, rough reminder of the faith you're supposed to carry. The palace never sleeps. Servants scurry their sandals slapping stone, while guards stand rigid, spears glinting. You catch a whiff of baking bread from the kitchens, a brief grounding scent amid the chaos. Another petitioner approaches, bowing so low his forehead nearly kisses the floor. He begs for land rights, his voice trembling. You listen, your face a mask of calm, but your stomach twists. Every choice ripples across the kingdom, and there's no manual for god kings. Your mother's voice echoes in your head, urging you to be strong, to be divine. But strength feels like a costume, and divinity a lie. The amulet presses against your side, a tiny weight, heavier than your crown. You glance at the petitioner, then at the courtiers, their eyes hungry for your verdict. You're Horus, you're the sun, you're Egypt. But right now, you're just a kid, trying not to mess this up. The day stretches ahead each hour, a new test of your divine mask. You move toward the royal archives where scribes await with reports on trade routes. The air grows cooler here, the stone walls damp with the Nile's breath. A senior scribe, his fingers stained with ink, unrolls a papyrus, detailing caravan delays in the Sinai. You listen, nodding, but your mind drifts to the amulet, to the child's faith, to the vizier's sly glance. Every detail matters, yet every detail feels like a trap. You recall the temple's smoke, curling like a question mark. Do the gods really watch, or is this all a grand show? The scribe pauses, waiting for your command. You suggest rerouting the caravans through a safer pass, a decision you hope sounds kingly. He bows, but you catch a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Even the scribes judge you, weighing your youth against your title. You straighten, gripping the amulet through your robe, and push forward. Gods don't waver, and neither can you, not yet. The sun climbs higher, baking the palace into a haze of heat and incense, and you're ushered back to your private chambers for the morning rituals that cement your divine status. These aren't just routines. They're a performance to convince everyone, maybe even yourself, that you're more than mortal. You step into a room where the air's thick with the scent of lotus and frankincense, and priests wait with bowls of oils and strange tools that look like they belong in a healer's kit. Your skin prickles as they approach their chants, low and rhythmic, like a heartbeat you can't escape. This is your life now, a god king who can't skip the morning skincare routine from the underworld. You stand still as they drape you in a pleated kilt, its gold threads catching the light like a second sun. A servant fastens a broad collar of lapis lazuli and carnelian around your neck, its weight a reminder of the kingdom you carry. Then comes the weird part. A priest, his face solemn as a tomb, smears a paste on your cheeks, some mix of honey natron and who knows what else. Mainstream history notes that pharaohs underwent daily purification rites to maintain their divine purity, ensuring Egypt's harmony with the gods. But here's the quirky bit. Some sources whisper that certain ointments included powdered ostrich eggs, believed to channel solar energy. You wince, wondering if you're slathered in bird dust. Historians still argue whether these rituals were symbolic, or if priests thought they literally transformed you into a god. You're leaning toward fancy theater, but the priest's intense stares make you second guess. They hand you a bronze mirror, its surface polished to a gleam. You catch your reflection, kohl-lined eyes, shaved head gleaming under a striped Neem's headdress. You look the part, but inside, you're still the kid who'd rather be tossing stones by the Nile. You joke to yourself about needing a divine barber, but the priests don't crack a smile. Humor's a tough sell when everyone thinks you're the sun's earthly twin. Next, they lead you to a small shrine in the corner, where a statue of Maat, goddess of truth, stares with unblinking eyes. You're supposed to offer her a feather symbolizing balance, but the priest hands you a real one, plucked from some poor ibis. You place it on the altar, muttering the prescribed words about upholding justice. The feather trembles in a stray breeze, and you wonder if Maat's judging your half-hearted delivery. The priests nod satisfied, but you feel like a fraud. Remember that crocodile-dung ointment from the temple? Yeah, this feels just as absurd, but you play along. Gods don't get stage fright. The rituals drag on. They shave your body hair every bit to keep you pure, a custom that makes you grit your teeth. The razor's sharp, and the priest's hand is steady, but you're one slip away from a divine nick. You quip under your breath about needing a god of razors, but the priest's focus doesn't waver. By now, the room's stifling, and sweat beads under your headdress. You're supposed to embody eternal strength, but right now, you'd trade your throne for a dip in the Nile. Finally, they crown you with the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, its red and white curves heavy on your brow. The shent is more than jewelry. It's Egypt itself uniting the two lands under your rule. You stand taller, feeling its weight, and the priests chant louder, their voices echoing off the stone. For a moment, you almost believe you're divine. Then a fly buzzes past, and you're back to being a kid in a fancy hat, trying not to swat it. The rites end with a libation. You pour wine into a golden bowl, offering it to Amun-Ra, the same god you honored at dawn. The liquid glints, and you catch a whiff of its sweetness, tempting you to sneak a sip. But gods don't drink on the job, so you let the priests take it away. You're ushered to a cedar chair, where a scribe waits with a papyrus detailing your next duties. The rituals have left you polished, perfumed, and exhausted, but there's no rest. The court awaits, and you've got to look like you were born to rule. Stepping into the corridor, you're hit by the palace's pulse servants, darting guards, standing like statues, and the distant clatter of kitchen pots. Your mother appears, her golden sandals clicking, and whispers advice about handling the nobles. Her tone's warm, but her eyes are calculating, like she's already planning your reign's next move. You nod, clutching the clay amulet from that child at the temple, its rough edge grounding you. You're Horus, sure, but you're also her son, and that's a role you can't shed. The nobles gather in the audience hall, their robes a riot of colors, their smiles as sharp as daggers. You take your throne, the same one that felt like a cage earlier, and survey the crowd. A high official steps forward, petitioning for more land for his estate. His words are honeyed, but you sense the trap. Give him too much, and others will demand the same. You deflect with a vague promise, a trick you've seen your mother use. The official bows, but his eyes narrow. You're learning fast, divine or not. Trust is a luxury you can't afford. The hall's air grows heavier, thick with perfume and ambition. You catch a servant fanning you with an ostrich plume, and you almost laugh, thinking of the egg dust paste. Is this what godhood boils down to? Feathers and facades. You push the thought away, focusing on the next petitioner, a merchant complaining about bandits on the trade routes. You promise to send soldiers a decision historians say pharaohs like Thutmose III made to secure commerce. The merchant beams, but you know it's a band-aid on a bigger problem. As the audience drags on, your crown digs into your scalp, and your back aches from sitting stiffly. You're supposed to be the sun, but you feel more like a candle burning at both ends. A noble's child approaches, offering a tiny scarab amulet, and you smile, tucking it beside the clay one. These small gifts pile up, each a reminder of the faith you're expected to carry. You wonder if the gods feel this tired, or if they're laughing at your mortal struggle. The rituals have polished you into a divine figure, but the cracks are already showing. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid navigating a world where every smile hides a scheme. The nobles' voices fade as you rise, signaling the end of the audience. You step into the corridor, the amulets clinking softly, and take a deep breath. The day's far from over, and the two lands don't wait for anyone, not even a god. The palace's golden glow fades as you step into the grand audience hall, where the air crackles with ambition sharper than a sickle blade. The nobles are already assembled, their robes, a kaleidoscope of dyed linen, their faces schooled into masks of devotion. But you know better. These are vipers in lotus crowns, each one angling for a slice of your power. You're still tingling from the morning's rituals, the weight of the double crown, and that ostrich egg paste, lingering like a bad dream. Now you're thrust into a different kind of ritual, navigating the court's web of intrigue, where every word is a trap and every smile a feint. You settle onto your throne, the cedar creaking under you, and grip the clay and scarab amulets tucked in your belt for luck. Good luck surviving this one, kid. The hall's vast, its columns painted with scenes of your ancestors smiting enemies. You wish you could smite a few egos right now. The nobles bow low, but their eyes dart, sizing you up. At 14, you're a god king, but to them, you're also a pawn in their game. Mainstream history tells us pharaohs relied on a tight circle of advisors to govern, often drawn from noble families who controlled vast estates. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some nobles kept pet baboons trained to screech at rivals during court sessions, a bizarre status flex that could disrupt debates. You scan the crowd, half expecting a monkey to leap out. Historians still argue whether these nobles were loyal stewards or power-hungry schemers who destabilized reigns. From where you're sitting, it's definitely the latter. A tall, noble Tahotep steps forward, his gold armlets glinting. He's all charm, his voice smooth as honeyed wine, praising your divine wisdom before petitioning for control of a lucrative quarry in Aswan. You nod, keeping your face blank, but your gut churns. Give him the quarry, and he'll grow richer, maybe too rich. Deny him, and you risk his allies turning on you. Your mother's advice from earlier echoes: promise much, deliver little. You tell Tahotep you'll consider his request after consulting the gods, a stall tactic that sounds holy, but buys you time. He bows, but his smile's too tight. You've just made an enemy, or maybe he was one already. Next up is Lady Nebet, a sharp-eyed widow who controls half the Delta's grain fields. She's less direct, offering you a gift, a turquoise-encrusted dagger, while casually mentioning her son's readiness for a military post. You take the dagger, its weight cold in your hand, and quip that it's sharp enough to cut through court gossip. The crowd chuckles, but Nebet's eyes narrow. She's not here for jokes. She's here to secure her family's influence. You promise to review her son's merits, another dodge, but you feel her gaze like a hawk circling prey. These nobles aren't just asking for favors. They're testing you, probing for weakness. The petitions pile up. Land disputes, tax, exemptions, temple endowments. Each noble's request hides a deeper motive: more power, more wealth, more leverage. You're starting to see the court as a chessboard, with you as both king and pawn. A younger noble Amenemhat tries a bolder move, suggesting you marry his sister to strengthen ties with his nome. You raise an eyebrow, joking that you're already married to Egypt itself. The laughter's thin, and Amenemhat's face reddens. You've deflected, but you've also bruised his pride. And pride in this court is a dangerous thing to wound. Your vizier, the one with the sneaky glance from yesterday, hovers nearby, whispering names and alliances to keep you from stumbling. But his advice feels like a leash, and you wonder if he's playing his own game. You recall the baboon tidbit, and imagine him with one on his shoulder screeching his secrets. The thought almost makes you laugh, but you catch yourself. Gods don't giggle in public. Instead, you call for a break, claiming you need to consult the royal archives. It's a lie, but it gets you out of the hall and into a quieter corridor where the air's less thick with scheming. Alone for a moment, you lean against a wall, the stone cool against your back. The amulets press into your side, reminders of the faith you're supposed to embody. But faith feels flimsy when you're surrounded by wolves in linen. Your mother finds you her sandal clicks, announcing her before she speaks. She warns you about Tahotep's ties to the Theban priesthood and Nebet's grain monopolies. Her words are a lifeline, but they also remind you how alone you are. Even she has her own agenda. You nod, tucking her advice away, and joke that you need a god of intrigue to survive this court. She doesn't smile, just adjusts your collar and sends you back to the fray. The hall's no less tense when you return. A new petitioner, a grizzled general, requests more troops for the Nubian border. His loyalty seems genuine, but you catch Ptahhotep whispering to a scribe, their eyes on the general. Are they plotting to undermine him, or is it something bigger? You approve the troops, a decision historians note. Pharaohs like Ramses II used to secure frontiers, but you add a condition the general reports directly to you. It's a power move, and the court murmurs. You've just shifted the board, but you're not sure if it's a checkmate or a blunder. As the session drags on, the nobles' voices blur into a drone, and your crown feels heavier than ever. You're supposed to be the sun, but you're burning out under their scrutiny. A servant offers you a cup of pomegranate juice, and you hesitate, remembering tales of poisoned drinks. You take a sip anyway, the tartness sharp on your tongue, and hope it's just fruit. Paranoia's creeping in, but in this court, it's probably justified. The day's not over, but the nobles' games never stop. You rise, signaling the end of the audience, and they bow their movements. Synchronized, but their intentions, anything but. You step into the corridor, the amulets clinking, and feel the weight of every choice you've made. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid, learning that divinity doesn't shield you from intrigue. It just makes you a bigger target. The audience hall's scheming buzz still clings to you like desert dust as you retreat to a private courtyard, the midday sun painting the tiles in harsh gold. You're supposed to embody divine perfection, but the nobles' veiled threats and your own deflections have left you rattled. Now you face a quieter but heavier burden upholding the myth of your godhood, even when doubt gnaws at your core. The court's gone silent, but the gods, or at least their priests, are always watching, and you're about to dive into a performance where the stakes are your soul and Egypt's stability. You finger the clay and scarab amulets in your belt, their rough edges a small comfort. Time to play Horus again, kid, whether you believe it or not. You're led to a shaded pavilion where a high priest of Amun awaits, his shaved head gleaming like polished bronze. He's not like the nobles with their honeyed words. His eyes bore into you, as if he can see the cracks in your divine facade. Around you, servants arrange offerings, bread dates, and a jar of wine, while incense curls from a brazier, its scent sharp enough to sting. Your job is to lead a private rite, to reaffirm your connection to the gods, a daily act to keep the cosmic order, or Ma'at, intact. Mainstream history confirms pharaohs were seen as intermediaries between gods and mortals, their rituals ensuring Egypt's prosperity. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some priests used mirrors in ceremonies, believing they trapped divine light to recharge the pharaoh's godhood. You glance at a polished disc on the altar, half expecting it to zap you like some ancient battery. Historians still argue whether pharaohs internalized this divine role or saw it as political theater. Right now you're leaning toward the latter, but the priest's stare makes you wonder. He hands you a sistrum, a rattle sacred to Hathor, and you shake it, its metallic jangle echoing like a nervous laugh. The sound's supposed to please the gods, but it just makes you feel like a kid playing dress-up. You chant the prescribed words praising Amun's might, but your voice wavers. The priest doesn't flinch, but his lips tighten, and you know he's judging your conviction. You think back to the ostrich egg paste from your morning rituals, another absurd prop in this divine charade. Is any of this real, or are you just a puppet in a gilded cage? The rite intensifies. You pour wine onto the altar, the red liquid pooling like blood before soaking into the stone. The priest mutters about your divine essence, but you're distracted by a sudden thought. What if the gods don't care? You're supposed to be their vessel, but you're still haunted by Ptahhotep's tight smile and Nebet's calculating gaze from the court. You quip to yourself that even gods must get tired of politics, but the priest's glare snaps you back. Humor's your shield, but it's useless against the weight of eternity. Next, you're handed a small ankh, the symbol of life carved from obsidian. You're to hold it aloft, while the priest recites your titles: Son of Ra, Lord of the Two Lands, Beloved of Amun. Each name feels like a stone piled on your shoulders. You grip the ankh tighter, its edges biting your palm, and try to focus. The priest's voice rises, and you catch a phrase about your eternal Ka, your soul that's meant to outlive the stars. But doubt creeps in. What if your Ka's just as confused as you are? You push the thought away, straightening your spine. Gods don't second-guess themselves, and neither can you. The pavilion's air grows heavier, the incense thick enough to choke. You're led to a low table where a papyrus awaits, inked with spells to protect your divine essence. You're supposed to read them aloud, but the hieroglyphs blur before your eyes. You stumble over a word, and the priest's eyebrow twitches. Great, now, you're flunking Godhood 101. You recover, finishing the spell, but the mistake lingers like a bad omen. You joke under your breath about needing a divine tutor, but the priest's silence is louder than any rebuke. The rite ends with you offering a lotus flower to the altar, its petals soft against your fingers. You place it gently as if it might break, and the priest nods, finally satisfied. But you're not. Every chant, every gesture feels like a lie you're telling yourself. You're Horus, sure, but you're also a kid who's scared of letting Egypt down. The noble's schemes, the priest's expectations, and your mother's whispered plans all swirl in your head, a storm you can't outrun. As you leave the pavilion, the courtyard's heat hits like a slap. Servants trail you their sandals whispering against the tiles, while a guard's spear glints in the sun. You're due in the council chamber next, where your vizier and advisors wait to discuss grain taxes. But your mind's still in the pavilion, stuck on that wavering chant and the priest's judging eyes. You wonder if past pharaohs felt this way, trapped between divinity and doubt. Historians note that figures like Akhenaten challenged the gods' dominance, but you're not ready to rewrite Egypt's faith. Not yet. Your mother intercepts you, her presence as commanding as ever. She senses your unease and murmurs that doubt is human, but you must bury it deep. Her words are a balm, but they don't erase the knot in your chest. You nod, clutching the amulets, the clay one from the child, the scarab from the noble's kid. They're small, but they anchor you, reminders of the faith others have in you, even if you don't have it in yourself. The council chamber looms ahead, its doors flanked by statues of falcon-headed Horus. You pause, taking a breath that tastes of dust and incense. You're supposed to be the god these statues represent, but right now, you're just a kid faking it. A servant offers you a cup of water, and you drink deeply, the coolness grounding you. You quip to yourself that even gods need hydration, but the joke feels hollow. The Two Lands don't care about your doubts. They need you to shine no matter how dim you feel. You step toward the chamber, the amulets clinking softly, and brace for the next act. The priests, the nobles, the gods. They all demand a perfect pharaoh, but perfection's a myth, and you're learning that myths are heavier than stone. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid wondering if you'll ever believe the lie you're living. The council chamber's weight lingers as you're whisked to a dusty plateau beyond the palace, where the skeleton of your future tomb A pyramid rises against the stark blue sky. The air smells of stone and sweat, and the clink of chisels echoes like a heartbeat. You're here to inspect the construction, a grim reminder that even gods must plan for death. At 14, mortality feels distant, but the priests and nobles never let you forget your eternal legacy depends on this monument. You clutch the clay and scarab amulets, their familiar edges steadying you, but the sight of the pyramid's half-built bulk stirs a chill no desert sun can banish. You're not just building a tomb, you're wrestling with the void, and it's staring back. Workers swarm the site, their bronze skin glistening as they haul limestone blocks up ramps slick with sand. Overseers bark orders, their whips coiled but ready, while scribes tally quotas on papyrus. The scale of it dwarfs you, thousands of lives bent to ensure your soul's journey to the afterlife. Mainstream history tells us pyramids like those at Giza were feats of engineering built by skilled laborers and seasonal farmers, not slaves, as old myths claimed. But here's the quirky tidbit: some workers inscribed graffiti on hidden stones, cheeky notes like, "We love beer," or "Sneferu's boys rock." You smirk, imagining their defiance etched where no priest will ever look. Historians still argue whether pharaohs micromanaged these projects or left them to architects like Imhotep. You're not sure, but the overseer's nervous bow suggests you're expected to have all the answers. You stride forward, your coal-lined eyes squinting against the glare. The chief architect, a wiry man named Khufu, unrolls a papyrus plan, pointing out the burial chamber's alignment with the stars. His voice is steady, but his hands tremble. Your approval means his life. You nod, tracing the design with a finger, but your mind's elsewhere. This pyramid is your ticket to eternity, yet it feels like a cage being built block by block. You quip to yourself that even gods need an exit strategy, but the architect's anxious stare kills the humor. Gods don't joke about death. A worker stumbles nearby, dropping a stone that cracks on impact. The overseer lunges, shouting, but you raise a hand, halting him. The worker, barely older than you, kneels, his eyes wide with fear. You ask his name, Anpu. He stammers, and tell him to rise. The crowd murmurs. Pharaohs don't usually chat with laborers. You're not sure why you did it. Maybe it's the amulets reminding you of the child's faith. Or maybe it's the doubt from yesterday's rite making you crave something human. You tell Anpu to be more careful, your voice firm but kind, and the overseer relaxes. Small mercies don't build pyramids, but they might keep you from feeling like a statue. Khufu leads you to the base, where a massive granite slab waits for your blessing. You're to inscribe your cartouche, your royal name, to bind the pyramid to your soul. The priest beside you hands over a reed pen and a pot of ink, his chant low and urgent. You trace the hieroglyphs, your hand steady despite the knot in your chest. The act feels final, like signing your own epitaph. You think back to the nobles, scheming smiles, Ptah-hotep, Nebet, Amenemhat, all vying for your favor, while you're here, carving your name into eternity. The irony's bitter. They'll outlive this visit, but not your tomb. The sun beats down, and your headdress traps heat like a furnace. You ask Khufu about the workers' conditions, a question that makes him blink. He assures you they're fed barley bread, onions, and beer, but his tone's too quick, like he's hiding something. You recall those graffiti notes. Beer-loving workers might not be as content as he claims. You order extra rations for the next month, a decision historians note pharaohs like Khufu himself made to boost morale. Khufu bows, but you catch a flicker of unease. Is he skimming supplies? You file the thought away next to the vizier's sly glance and the priest's judging stare. A sudden gust stirs the sand, and you shield your eyes, catching a glimpse of the Nile in the distance, its waters glinting like a promise of life. For a moment, you envy its freedom, unbound by tombs or titles. Then Khufu clears his throat, pulling you back to the pyramid's shadow. He points to a ramp where workers strain their chants, rhythmic but weary. You ask how long until completion, and he hedges years, maybe decades. The answer lands like a stone. You'll spend your life building a monument you'll never see, finished a thought as heavy as the blocks around you. The priest interrupts, urging you to offer a prayer to Osiris, Lord of the afterlife. You kneel before a small altar, scattering incense that smells of pine and ash. The words come automatically, but your heart's not in it. You're supposed to believe this tomb will carry you to the stars, but doubt creeps in colder than the granite. Do the gods care about your cartouche, or is this all a grand delusion? You quip under your breath about needing a god of deadlines, but the priest's drone drowns it out. Humor's your lifeline, but it's fraying fast. As the rite ends, you rise, dusting sand from your kilt. The workers watch, their faces a mix of awe and exhaustion. You wonder what they see, a god, a king, or just a kid in a fancy crown. Anpu's still there, his eyes darting to you before dropping. You nod slightly, a silent acknowledgement, and he straightens, almost smiling. It's a small connection, but it grounds you like the amulet's weight against your side. Khufu escorts you back to your chariot, the horses snorting in the heat, your mother's waiting, her expression unreadable as she scans the sight. She murmurs that a grand tomb strengthens your reign, but her tone hints at something else, maybe worry about the cost in gold and loyalty. You nod, too tired to dig deeper, and climb into the chariot. The pyramid looms behind you, a half-built dream that's already haunting you. The ride back is quiet, the clop of hooves and creak of wheels your only company. You think of the nobles, waiting to pounce on any sign of weakness, and the priests demanding your divine perfection. The pyramid's your legacy, but it's also a reminder that even gods die. You grip the amulets, their edges biting your palm, and wonder if eternity's worth the price. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid staring down death, and it's closer than you'd like. The pyramid's shadow still looms in your mind as you board a royal barge, its cedar planks creaking underfoot, to sail the Nile and inspect the floodplains. The river's your lifeline, Egypt's pulsing artery, but its floods are as fickle as the nobles you left behind. You're here to gauge the water's rise, a task that could make or break your people's harvest. The air's thick with the scent of mud and lotus, and the slap of oars against water sets a rhythm that's almost soothing. But there's no peace for you, not with the two lands hanging on this river's whims. You grip the clay and scarab amulets, their weight, a reminder of the faith you carry, and brace for a journey where nature's the real pharaoh. The barge glides north, its golden prow slicing the Nile's green surface. Crewmen chant as they row, their voices blending with the cries of ibises overhead. You stand at the rail, the breeze tugging your kilt, and scan the banks where farmers kneel, offering prayers to Hapi, the flood god. Mainstream history tells us the Nile's annual inundation was Egypt's heartbeat, depositing fertile silt that fed millions. But here's the quirky tidbit: some farmers tossed amulets shaped like fish into the river, believing they'd coax Hapi into a generous flood. You spot a glint in the water, maybe one of those charms, and smirk, wondering if Hapi's as picky as your court priests. Historians still argue whether pharaohs personally oversaw flood inspections or delegated them to officials. The nervous scribe beside you clutching a water measuring rod suggests you're expected to play the starring role. The scribe, a wiry man named Senenmut, points to a nilometer, a stone staircase carved into the bank to track the flood's height. Its steps are barely wet, a bad sign. He stammers that the water's lower than last year, and you feel a knot tighten in your chest. A weak flood means lean crops, hungry farmers, and restless nobles eager to exploit any failure. You ask Senenmut for predictions, but his answers are vague, hedged with talk of the gods' will. You quip that Hapi needs a performance review, but Senenmut's tight smile says humor won't fix the river. You're supposed to be a god king, but even you can't command the Nile. The barge docks at a village, and you step onto the bank, your sandals sinking into soft mud. Villagers gather their faces, weathered but hopeful, offering baskets of dates and barley. A child no older than 6 hands you a reed woven into a tiny boat, her eyes wide with awe. You tuck it beside your amulets, thinking of the clay charm from the temple kid. These gifts pile up, each one a thread tying you to Egypt's heart. You thank the villagers, your voice steady, and promise to pray for a stronger flood. They bow, but you catch their worried glances at the river. They believe in you, or at least in Horus, but belief won't fill their granaries. An elder approaches, his voice rough as the desert, and describes last year's meager harvest. He doesn't blame you, not directly, but his words carry weight. The river tests us, divine one. You nod, recalling your pyramid visit, another test, another weight. You promise to send engineers to repair irrigation canals a move. Historians note pharaohs like Senusret III used to boost yields. The elder bows, but his eyes linger, searching for the god behind your crown. You're not sure he finds it. Back on the barge, Senenmut unrolls a papyrus map, tracing the Nile's path through the 2 lands. He suggests diverting water from a nearby lake to aid struggling fields, but the plan's costly, and you know the nobles will balk. Ptahhotep's tight smile from the court flashes in your mind. Would he use this to undermine you? You approve the plan anyway, hoping it's bold enough to silence critics. Senenmut scribbles your orders, but his hesitation screams doubt. You're starting to think everyone's waiting for you to fail, nobles, priests, even scribes. The river narrows, and the barge passes a shrine to Sobek, the crocodile god. A priest on the bank burns incense, his chants carrying over the water. You're supposed to toss an offering, a gold ring maybe, but your hand pauses. Sobek's a protector, but those jaws don't inspire trust. You drop the ring, watching it sink, and quip to yourself that you'd rather negotiate with crocodiles than nobles. Senenmut doesn't hear, but a nearby oarsman stifles a grin. At least someone gets your humor, even if it's fleeting. The sun dips, painting the Nile in hues of fire. You visit another nilometer, its steps just as dry. Senenmut's face falls, and you feel the villagers' eyes on you, heavy as the pyramid stones. You lead a brief rite, sprinkling barley into the water, while chanting to Hapi. The words feel hollow, like your prayers at the tomb. Do the gods listen? Or is the Nile as indifferent as the stars? You think back to the fish amulets. Maybe the farmers have the right idea, hedging their bets with trinkets. Doubt's creeping in again, but you bury it, your face a mask of divine calm. As the barge turns back toward the palace, a heron lifts from the reeds, its wings a flash of white against the dusk. You envy its freedom unbound by floods or crowns. Senenmut drones about crop estimates, but you're only half listening your mind on the villagers' hopeful faces and the elders' heavy words. You're supposed to control the Nile's pulse, but it's controlling you each low step on the Nilometer, a jab at your godhood. Your mother's waiting when you dock her silhouette sharp against the torchlight. She asks about the flood, and you admit it's weak. Her eyes narrow not at you, but at the problem, and she suggests a festival to appease Hapi, a spectacle to boost morale. You nod grateful for her pragmatism, but you know a festival won't raise the water. The amulets press against your side, and you wonder if the child's reed boat could carry your worries away. The palace looms ahead, its lights flickering like stars. You're due to meet the priests tomorrow, and the nobles will be circling, sniffing for weakness. The Nile's low, the granaries are at risk, and your divine mask is slipping. You quip under your breath that even gods need a rain check, but the joke's flat. The river's your lifeblood, but it's also your judge. And right now, it's not impressed. You're Horus. You're Egypt. But you're also a kid, praying the Nile doesn't drown your reign before it's begun. The Nile's sluggish flow still haunts you as you step into the Temple of Ptah, its shadowed halls cool but heavy with the weight of divine demands. The air's thick with incense, sharp and smoky, and the flicker of oil lamps casts eerie shapes on walls, carved with gods' unblinking eyes. You're here to appease deities who've grown restless, their wrath blamed for the river's weak flood and whispers of unrest. The priest's chants drone like a storm on the horizon, and you feel the pressure to offer something grand, something to make the gods forgive Egypt's faltering pulse. You clutch the clay scarab and reed amulets, their edges worn from your nervous grip, and steel yourself. You're not just a king today. You're a cosmic fixer, and the gods don't take IOUs. You're led to a massive altar, where a statue of Ptah looms his staff, and Ankh gleaming in the half-light. Priests circle their linen robes, rustling, and pile offerings, bread honey, and glistening cuts of beef before the god. Your role is to present the grandest gift, a chest of gold, ingots, each stamped with your cartouche. Mainstream history tells us pharaohs made lavish offerings to temples, strengthening their divine mandate and the priesthood's loyalty. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some offerings included mummified cats, sacred to Bastet, buried in temple crypts to curry her favor. You glance at a side altar half expecting a feline sarcophagus and shudder. Historians still argue whether these gifts were heartfelt or strategic bribes to keep the gods and their priests on your side. You're betting on the latter, but the high priest's piercing gaze makes you play the part. You lift the chest, its weight straining your arms, and place it before Ptah. The priests chant louder, their voices vibrating in your chest, and you recite a prayer begging for the god's mercy. The words feel like pebbles in your mouth, heavy, useless against the Nile's betrayal. You think of the low Nilometer steps from yesterday, each one a silent accusation. The gold glints, but you wonder if it's enough. Ptah's stone eyes don't blink, and you quip to yourself that even gods must love a good bribe. The priest doesn't hear, but his frown says, "Your focus better, stay holy." Next, they hand you a censer, its embers glowing red. You swing it gently, sending clouds of myrrh spiraling upward, the scent so thick it clogs your throat. The priests claim it carries your prayers to the heavens, but you're starting to think it's just smoke and show. A junior priest approaches holding a tray of small, unsettling items, dried lotus roots, falcon feathers, and something that looks suspiciously like a crocodile's claw. You're to burn them a ritual to ward off Seth's chaos. You toss them into a brazier, the flames hissing, and try not to flinch at the claw's charred smell. Remember the crocodile-dung ointment from your first day. This feels like its creepy cousin, and you're not thrilled to be the one stoking the fire. The high priest steps closer, his voice low but sharp, urging you to offer a personal sacrifice, a lock of your hair to bind your soul to the god's will. You hesitate, the scissors in his hand glinting like a threat. Hair's sacred, a piece of your essence, and given it feels like surrendering a part of yourself. But the temple's watching, and doubt's not an option. You nod, and he snips a small curl from beneath your headdress. It falls into the brazier, curling into ash, and you feel a pang like you've lost more than hair. You quip under your breath about needing a divine haircut, but the priest's stare kills the humor. Gods don't joke when Seth's in play. The rite drags on each step, more draining. You pour wine over the altar, its splash echoing in the silence, and kneel before Ptah, your knees aching on the stone. The priest's chants peak a wail that makes your skin crawl, and you're struck by how much this feels like groveling. You're Horus the sun, but right now, you're begging stone statues for a break. The noble's schemes, Ptah-hotep's quarry, grab Nebet's dagger flash in your mind, and you wonder if the gods are as manipulative as your court. The thought's dangerous, but it's hard to shake. A priest hands you a papyrus inscribed with a hymn to Osiris, and you read it aloud, your voice echoing off the walls. The words promise resurrection, but they feel hollow, like the promises you made to the villagers by the Nile. You stumble over a line, and the priest's eyebrow twitches, just like during your private rite. Great, another divine fumble. You recover finishing the hymn, but the mistake stings. You're supposed to be flawless, but flaws keep creeping in like sand through a sieve. The ceremony ends with you offering a small statue of Ma'at, her feather gleaming white. You place it carefully, praying her balance will steady the two lands, and maybe you too. The priests bow their faces unreadable, and you rise your body heavy with exhaustion. The gold, the hair, the creepy claw, none of it feels like enough. You think of the mummified cats, and wonder if Bastet's laughing at your desperation. The gods are silent, but their silence is loud. You leave the temple, the night air sharp against your skin. Servants trail you their torches, casting long shadows, and you hear the Nile's faint murmur in the distance. Your mother's waiting at the palace gate, her eyes scanning you for signs of weakness. She asks about the rite, and you mutter that Ptah's pleased for now. She nods but suggests doubling the temple's grain allowance, a move to keep the priests loyal. Her pragmatism grounds you, but it also reminds you how alone you are, even with her by your side. The palace hums with activity, guards, scribes, distant laughter from a banquet. You're due to meet your advisors tomorrow, and the nobles will be there circling like vultures. The gods' demands feel as heavy as the pyramid stones, and you're not sure if your offerings tipped the scales. You clutch the amulets, the reed boat from the village, kit a new addition, and wonder if faith's enough to save a faltering flood. You quip to yourself that even gods need a vacation, but the joke's flat. The two lands need you to be divine, but divinity's a mask, and it's slipping fast. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid wondering if the gods are even listening. The temple's smoky weight still clings to you as you're ushered into the royal harem, a lush maze of gardens and veiled chambers where the air hums with perfume and whispered secrets. This isn't a place of rest. It's a political chessboard where your wives and concubines wield influence as deftly as any noble. You're here to navigate their complex dynamics, balancing affection duty and the ever-present threat of rivalry. The Nile's low flood and the gods' demands already have you on edge, and now you're stepping into a different kind of storm. You grip the clay scarab and reed amulets, their edges grounding you, but the harem's silken web feels like it could tangle even a god. Buckle up, kid love's just another battlefield. You enter a courtyard where date palms sway and a fountain bubbles its sound. Soft, but not enough to drown out the tension. Your great royal wife. Nefertari greets you first, her linen gown shimmering like moonlight. Her smile's warm, but her eyes sharp as the dagger Nebet gifted you in court. Miss nothing. Behind her, lesser wives and concubines linger their faces, a mix of deference and calculation. Mainstream history tells us pharaohs maintained harems to secure alliances and produce heirs with great royal wives, often holding significant political sway. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some concubines were trained as scribes, drafting letters to foreign courts to bolster Egypt's diplomacy. You spot a young woman, Ankhesen, holding a papyrus and wonder if she's penning a treaty or a plot. Historians still argue whether harems were harmonious or hotbeds of intrigue. From the way Nefertari's gaze flicks to Ankhes, you're betting on intrigue. Nefertari takes your arm, guiding you to a cushioned bench beneath a canopy. She speaks of the Nile's flood, her voice low, suggesting a festival to rally the people. It's a sound idea echoing your mother's advice, but you catch the edge in her tone. She's testing your resolve, maybe your loyalty. You nod, praising her wisdom, but your mind's on the others, watching. A second wife, Meret, approaches, offering a cup of spiced wine. Her smile's too sweet, and you hesitate, remembering court whispers of poisoned drinks. You sip anyway, the warmth spreading, and quip that even gods need a taste test. Meret laughs, but Nefertari's eyes narrow. Point one to the great royal wife. The harem's dynamics shift like sand. Ankhes, the scribe concubine, steps forward. Her voice soft, but deliberate, reporting on a letter from a Hittite princess seeking an alliance. Her words are neutral, but her glance at Nefertari carries a challenge. You thank her, keeping your tone even, but you feel the undercurrent. Ankhes is carving her own space, and Nefertari doesn't like it. You think back to the noble schemes in court. Ptahhotep's quarry, grab Nebet's dagger, and realize the harem's just as dangerous, only with softer weapons. You're supposed to be the sun, but right now, you're dodging shadows. A child runs up your son by a lesser wife, his tiny hands clutching a wooden toy chariot. He babbles about wanting to be a warrior, and you ruffle his hair, promising to teach him to ride. The women watch, their expressions unreadable, and you feel the weight of their expectations. Every heir's a pawn in their game. You send the boy off with a servant, your heart twisting. Fatherhood's supposed to be simple, but here, even love's a strategy. You quip to yourself that even gods need a parenting manual, but the thought's more bitter than funny. Nefertari steers the conversation to the temple offerings you made yesterday, probing for details. You mention the gold and the lock of hair, keeping your tone light, But her questions dig deeper. Did the priests seem pleased? Are the gods appeased? You deflect, saying Ta's favor is assured, but you're not sure she buys it. The other women listen, their silence louder than words. Merit offers another suggestion, a donation to Hathor's temple to bless the harem's fertility. It's a veiled jab at Nefertari, who's yet to bear a son. You nod vaguely, avoiding the trap, but the air crackles with unspoken rivalries. You rise, signaling a walk through the gardens, hoping movement will ease the tension. The women follow their sandals, whispering on the paths, and you pass beds of jasmine and lotus, their scents mingling with the harem's perfume. Anki's falls into step beside you, mentioning a rumor of unrest in Memphis. Her tone's casual, but you catch the hint she's offering intelligence to gain favor. You thank her, filing the info next to Tahotep's, scheming in the vizier's sly glance. The harem's not just a family, it's a spy network, and you're its reluctant hub. Nefertari reclaims your attention, pointing out a new statue of Isis, her voice smooth but possessive. She's marking her territory, and you feel the other women's eyes like needles. You praise the statue, keeping your words neutral, but your head's spinning. The Nile's low, the gods are grumpy, and now your wives are playing chess with your favor. You think of the fish amulets farmers tossed into the river. Maybe you need one for Hathor to survive this place. The walk ends at a pavilion, where musicians play their harps and flutes a soft backdrop. You sit, and Nefertari leans close, whispering about a noble's daughter who'd make a fine addition to the harem. It's a power move tying another family to your throne, but it also means more rivalries. You murmur that you'll consider it, your voice calm, but your gut churning. Merit and Ankus exchange glances, and you know this won't end peacefully. You quip under your breath that even gods need a referee, but the music drowns it out. As the evening deepens, you excuse yourself, citing a meeting with your vizier. The women bow their faces a mask of grace, but you feel their ambitions trailing you like smoke. Nefertari's hand lingers on yours, a reminder of her primacy, but even she's a player in this game. You step into the corridor, the amulets clinking, and take a breath of cooler air. Your mother's waiting outside, her eyes scanning you like a general reading a battlefield. She warns that Nefertari's influence is growing, but so is Ankus's cunning. You nod, too tired to reply, and head toward the council chamber. The harem's left. You drained its intrigues as heavy as the pyramid stones. You're supposed to be Horus, uniting the two lands. But right now, you're struggling to unite your own household. The Nile's faltering, the gods are silent, and the women you love, or at least rule, could undo you with a word. You clutch the amulets, the reed boat a fragile reminder of the village child's faith, and wonder if love's worth the cost. You're Egypt, you're the sun, but you're also a kid, caught in a web where every thread's a threat. The harem's perfumed intrigues still swirl in your head as you're roused before dawn, the sky barely bruised with light, to lead a military campaign against a rebellious tribe in the eastern desert. The palace's soft linens are swapped for a leather kilt and a bronze breastplate, its weight a stark contrast to the amulet's clay scarab and reed clinking at your belt. You're not just Horus today. You're a warlord expected to crush dissent and return with glory. The Nile's weak flood and the harem's rivalries fade against the prospect of blood and sand, but the stakes are just as high. You grip the chariot's rail, the desert's chill Bite in your skin and brace for a battle where victory's as fleeting as a mirage. Your chariot, gilded and drawn by two snorting stallions, leads a column of soldiers, spearmen, archers, and a handful of elite charioteers. Dust rises in clouds coating your throat, and the men's rhythmic march echoes like a pulse. General Ka, the grizzled commander, you backed in court, rides beside you, his face carved with scars and loyalty. Mainstream history tells us pharaohs often led campaigns to secure borders and resources, projecting strength to deter rivals like the Hittites. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some soldiers carried amulets, shaped like flies, believed to grant agility in battle, a nod to the pesky insect's evasiveness. You spot a bronze fly dangling from Ka's belt and smirk, wondering if it's braver than you feel. Historians still argue whether young pharaohs like you fought personally or stayed behind the lines. Ka's expectant glance suggests you're expected to lead, not hide. The desert stretches endless, its dunes rippling like frozen waves. Ka briefs you. The tribe nomads raiding trade routes has defied your envoys. Crush them, and you secure the Red Sea ports. Falter, and the noble's Ptahhotep's sneering face comes to mind. Will pounce on your weakness. You nod, gripping your khopesh, its curved blade heavy but familiar from training. You quip to Ka that even gods need a good sword arm, but his grunt says this isn't the time for jokes. The men look to you, their eyes a mix of awe and fear, and you feel the weight of their lives heavier than your pyramid stones. The enemy's camp appears at noon, a cluster of tents nestled against a rocky outcrop. You signal a halt, and scouts report the tribe small but fierce, armed with slings and short blades. Ka urges a direct assault, but you hesitate. Remembering the harem's lesson, brute force breeds resentment. You suggest sending an envoy, first offering amnesty if they swear loyalty. Ka's skeptical, but obeys, and you watch the messenger ride out a white cloth flapping. The tribe's leader, a wiry man with a braided beard, emerges, his stance defiant. Negotiations fail, and a slingstone whistles past the envoy's head. So much for diplomacy. You raise your arm, and the chariot's charged wheels rumbling like thunder. Dust chokes the air as you steer arrows hissing past. Your heart pounds, but you shout orders, channeling the statues of warrior pharaohs you've seen. You loose an arrow, striking a raider's shoulder, and Ka nods approval. The tribe fights hard, their slings deadly accurate, but your numbers overwhelm. A spear grazes your arm, the sting sharp but shallow, and you grit your teeth. Gods bleed apparently, but you can't let the men see you flinch. The battle's brief, but brutal. The tribe scatters, leaving their camp in flames. Ka reports minimal losses, 10 men wounded, 2 dead. You order the wounded tended, and the dead honored a gesture. Historians note pharaohs like Ramses II used to boost morale. The tribe's leader kneels, offering his dagger in surrender. You accept sparing his life, but demanding tribute, a move to show mercy without weakness. The men cheer, but you feel hollow. Glory's supposed to taste sweeter than this. You walk the battlefield, the sand stained red, and spot a fallen raider clutching a fly amulet, its bronze dulled by dust. You think of your own amulets, the reed boat from the Nile village, the scarab from the noble's child, and wonder if faith helps when death comes. Ka interrupts, urging you to claim a trophy, maybe the leader's braid. You shake your head, joking that you'd rather collect desert roses than hair. Ka's laugh is grudging, but his respect feels real, a rare win in a world of schemers. The return march is quieter, the men weary but proud. You ride at the head, your arm bandaged, the pain a dull throb. The desert's vastness dwarfs your victory, and you think of the Nile's low flood, the harem's rivalries, the gods' silence. Each triumph's just a pause before the next fight. Your mother's waiting when you reach the palace, her eyes scanning your wound before softening with relief. She praises your victory, but warns that the nobles will spin it to their advantage. You nod, too tired to argue, and clutch the amulets, their weight a reminder of the faith you're supposed to carry. The palace hums with news of your campaign servants, whispering of your bravery. But you hear Tahotep's name in the murmurs, paired with talk of instability in the east. Is he already twisting your victory into a flaw? You quip to yourself that even gods need a publicist, but the thoughts sour. The men's cheers fade in your memory, replaced by the raiders' dead eyes and that fly amulet. Glory's a fleeting guest, but doubt's a loyal shadow. You're due to face the priests tomorrow, their demands as relentless as the desert sun. The campaign's strengthened your name, but it's also painted a target on your back. You think of Nefertari's sharp eyes in the harem, the vizier's sly glance, the low nilometer steps. Every step forward feels like a step toward a cliff. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid who's learning that war's just another court, and the real battle's keeping your throne and your soul intact. The desert's dust still clings to your sandals as you're led to a dimly lit chamber deep within the palace, where priests await to reveal the grim art of mummification, your future preserved for eternity. The air's heavy with natron and resin, a sharp sting that makes your eyes water, and the flickering oil lamps cast shadows that dance like restless spirits. You're here to learn how your body will be prepared for the afterlife, a ritual as vital as any battle or flood inspection. The campaign's fleeting glory fades against this stark reminder of death, and you grip the clay scarab and reed amulets, their familiar edges grounding you. You're Horus, but even gods must face the embalmer's knife, and the thought chills you more than the desert night. The chamber's walls are carved with scenes of Anubis, jackal-headed and solemn, guiding souls through the underworld. A stone table dominates the room, stained dark from centuries of use, and beside it stand 3 priests, their hands stained with myrrh. The head embalmer, a gaunt man named Imset, bows low, his voice soft but precise as he explains the process. Mainstream history tells us mummification was a 70-day ritual, preserving pharaohs' bodies to ensure their soul could thrive in the afterlife. But here's the quirky tidbit. Embalmers sometimes used palm wine to rinse the body's cavities, believing its sweetness pleased Osiris. You wrinkle your nose, imagining your divine self doused in booze. Historians still argue whether pharaohs studied these rites to prepare spiritually or to control their legacy. Imset's intense gaze suggests you're here for both, and there's no opting out. He begins with a bronze hook, its tip curved like a question mark. This, he says, will pull your brain through your nostrils, bit by bit. You swallow hard picturing it, and quip to yourself that even gods don't need that kind of nose job. Imset doesn't hear, but his assistant's lips twitch, a rare crack in the solemnity. They'll discard the brain useless, they claim, but preserve your heart, the seat of your soul. You touch your chest, feeling its steady beat, and wonder if it'll betray your doubts when Anubis weighs it against Ma'at's feather. Next, Imset points to a curved blade. its edge glinting. They'll slice your side to remove your organs, liver, lungs, stomach, intestines, each stored in canopic jars under the god's protection. He lifts a jar topped with a falcon head, kebesenuef, for your intestines. The craftsmanship's stunning, but the thought of your guts in there makes your stomach lurch. You think of the crocodile claw you burned for Ta, another creepy ritual, another piece of you given to the gods. The priests drone on, describing how they'll pack your body with natron to dry it, a process that'll leave you lighter than the reed amulet from the Nile village. Imset unrolls a papyrus, showing spells to be wrapped with your linens, ensuring your cause safe passage. You're to approve them, a kingly duty, but the hieroglyphs blur before your eyes. The words promise rebirth, but they feel as hollow as your battlefield victory. You nod, muttering approval, but your mind's on the pyramid. You inspected its stones, waiting to seal you in. You quip under your breath that even gods need a better retirement plan, but the priest's focus is unrelenting. Humor's your shield, but it's dented. They show you the amulets. They will tuck into your wrappings, scarabs, ankhs, tiny eyes of Horus. You finger the scarab at your belt, a gift from a noble's child, and wonder if it'll join you in the tomb. Imset explains each charm's purpose: protection, strength, vision in the dark. You want to ask if there's one for courage, but the question feels too raw. The priest's eyes are on you, expecting divine confidence, but you're still haunted by the low Nile Nefertari's sharp gaze, the raider's dead eyes in the desert. Eternity's a promise, but mortality's a fact. The lesson shifts to the wrapping, a meticulous dance of linen strips soaked in resin. Imset demonstrates on a wooden dummy, his hands deft as he folds and tucks. The dummy's faceless, but you see yourself in its place, bound for a journey you can't imagine. The resin scent, piney thick, clogs your throat, and you recall the myrrh from Ta's temple, another offering to appease the divine. You're supposed to be Horus, reborn daily, but this feels like a rehearsal for surrender. Imset ends with the death mask, a gold likeness to ensure your Kai recognizes you. He shows you a sketch, your face serene and eternal, nothing like the kid who fumbled a hymn or hesitated in battle. You stare at it, feeling a disconnect, and quip to yourself that even gods need a better headshot. The priests don't hear, but the assistant's eyes meet yours, a flicker of understanding. Maybe he's human under the ritual mask, too. You leave the chamber, the air outside sharp with the Nile's damp breath. Servants trail you their sandals soft on the stone, and your mother waits at the corridor's end, her eyes scanning you like a scribe reading omens. She asks about the rites, and you mutter that your cause in good hands. She nods, but warns that the priest's loyalty hinges on your generosity, more gold for their temples. Her pragmatism's a lifeline, but it reminds you how every act, even preparing for death, is political. The palace hums with evening life laughter from a distant hall, the clink of cups. You're due to face the nobles tomorrow, and Ptahhotep's name floats in the whispers, paired with talk of your youthful inexperience. The mummification lessons left you raw each step toward eternity, a reminder of how little time you have. You clutch the amulets, the reed boat, a fragile link to the village child's faith, and wonder if your heart's light enough for Mayhat's scale. You quip under your breath that even gods need a day off from death, but the joke's flat. The two lands need you alive, but the priests are already planning your tomb, and the balance feels impossible. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid staring into the dark, hoping your soul's ready when the knife comes. The embalming chamber's resinous chill still lingers as you're summoned to the temple of Amun, where the priest's influence towers over Egypt like a second sun. The air's thick with frankincense, its sharp bite mingling with the flicker of torchlight that dances across golden statues of gods, their eyes seeming to track your every move. You're here to confront the high priests whose control over the kingdom's wealth and faith challenges your own divine authority. The Nile's weak flood, the harem's tangled rivalries, and the grim weight of your future tomb have left you raw, and now you're stepping into a clash where the prize is nothing less than the soul of the two lands. You clutch the clay scarab and reed amulets, their edges smoothed by your restless fingers, and brace for a battle of wills where words cut deeper than any khopesh. You're Horus, kid, but these priests think they hold the leash to the heavens. You stride into the sanctum, the double crown heavy on your brow, its red and white curves proclaiming your rule over Upper and Lower Egypt. The high priest Nebwenef stands waiting, his linen robes pristine, his staff crowned with a ram's head, Amun's sacred emblem. His face is calm, almost serene, but his eyes are sharp, glinting with the same cunning you saw in Ptahhotep's smirk back in court. Lesser priests circle their soft chants, a low hum that vibrates in your chest like a distant storm. Mainstream history tells us the Amun priesthood, especially in the New Kingdom, amassed vast power controlling lands and treasuries that rivaled the pharaoh's own. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some priests kept sacred rams as oracles, believing their bleats carried Amun's divine will. You glance at a pen in the corner, half expecting a sheep to bleat your fate and stifle a smirk. Historians still argue whether pharaohs like you were true partners with the priesthood or mere puppets to their wealth. Nebwenef's poised stance, his bow shallow and calculated, suggests he's betting on the latter. He speaks first, his voice smooth as polished stone, lamenting the Nile's low flood as a sign of divine displeasure. He urges you to fund a new shrine to appease Amun, a request draped in piety, but heavy with ambition. More gold for his temple means more power in his hands. You nod, keeping your expression blank, and recall your mother's warning about the priest's greed, sharper than any noble's dagger. You counter, suggesting a modest offering, until the harvest stabilizes, testing his reaction. Nebwenef's lips tighten, a flicker of irritation breaking his calm, and you know you've hit a nerve. You quip to yourself that even gods need to balance the books, but his piercing stare snuffs out the humor. This isn't a game you can win with charm. The sanctum's tension thickens as Nebwenef shifts tactics, inviting you to lead a rite to consult Amun's will. You're led to a golden bark, a miniature ship cradling Amun's statue, which priests carry in a swaying procession. Your role is to ask the god's guidance on the shrine, but you smell a trap, a public performance, to pressure you into compliance. The bark tilts, and the priests claim its movements are Amun's answers, conveniently echoing Nebwenef's agenda. You think of those sacred rams, and wonder if a bleat would be more honest than this choreographed sway. You chant the ritual words, your voice steady but hollow, like when you burned that crocodile claw for Ptah. The priest's eyes bore into you, hunting for any crack in your divine mask, and you grip the ankh at your belt, hiding the tremor in your hands. The rite ends, but Nebwenef presses further, presenting a papyrus detailing temple expenses, grain incense laborers for their sprawling estates. He hints with a velvet jab that your recent desert campaign drained the treasury, implying your war glory cost Egypt stability. The words sting, conjuring the Raider's Fly amulet and the men you buried in the sand. You deflect, promising to review the accounts with your vizier, but you feel his words sowing doubt, just like Ptahhotep's whispers in court. You quip under your breath that even gods need a good accountant, but the thought's more desperate than defiant. The priest's power isn't just spiritual, it's gold land and the loyalty of thousands, and they wield it like a scepter. A junior priest steps forward, offering a small amulet, a ram's head carved in lapis lazuli, to strengthen your bond with Amun. You accept it, tucking it beside the reed boat from the Nile village. But the gift feels like a chain, not a blessing. Nebwenef watches his face unreadable, and you wonder if he's testing your loyalty or marking you as a rival to be tamed. You recall the mummification rites, the canopic jars waiting to cradle your organs, and realize the priests already own your afterlife. This amulet's just another claim on your living soul, a reminder that their influence binds you tighter than any linen wrap. You shift the conversation, asking about the people's faith in Amun, probing for weaknesses. Nebwenef boasts of crowded festivals and fervent prayers, but you press, mentioning rumors of unrest in Memphis Ancus's sharp tip from the harem. His pause is brief, a heartbeat of hesitation, before he assures you the temples are guiding the masses. You nod, filing his evasion alongside the vizier's sly glance and Nefertari's probing gaze. The priests are players in Egypt's intricate game, their moves as calculated as the nobles' schemes, and you're learning to read their board. The sanctum grows, stifling the incense, clogging your throat like a physical weight. You signal the end of the audience, thanking Nebwenef for his devotion with words as formal as his shallow bow. He promises to pray for the Nile's rise, but you sense it's a transaction, not a vow, another move in their endless chess match. You leave the temple, the night air sharp against your sweat-damp skin, and your mother meets you at the gate, her eyes scanning you like a scribe deciphering omens. She warns that Nebwenef's influence is spreading, threading through the nobles like a slow poison, and you must bind the priests with gifts or instill fear to keep them in check. You nod, clutching the new ram amulet, its weight heavier than the others, a cold knot against the warmth of the reed boat. The palace hums with torchlight and murmurs as you return, and Ptahhotep's name surfaces in the whispers, tied to lavish temple donations. Is he forging an alliance with Nebwenef, or playing his own angle to outmaneuver you? You're due to host a banquet tomorrow, where nobles and priests will mingle their ambitions, circling like jackals around a fresh kill. The priest's power feels as oppressive as the pyramid's unyielding stones, and you wonder if your divine mask can hold under their scrutiny. You quip to yourself that even gods need a night off from politics, but the joke lands flat, drowned by the temple's lingering echo. The two lands demand a pharaoh who balances faith and power, but the priests are tipping the scales, and you're just a kid trying to keep the sun from crashing down. The priest's veiled threats from the temple of Amun still coil around your thoughts, like incense smoke, as you're ushered into a grand banquet hall, its air thick with the aroma of roasted goose, honeyed wine, and the sharp tang of ambition. Tonight, you host a feast to celebrate your desert campaign's victory. But this is no mere celebration. It's a glittering arena where nobles, priests, and even your harem allies vie for your favor. Their smiles as cutting as the daggers they hide beneath their robes. The hall hums with life harps and flutes, weave a delicate melody, but it does little to mask the tension thrumming beneath the surface. Every gesture, every word is a move in a game where your throne is the prize. You clutch the clay scarab reed and new ram amulets tucked into your belt, their worn edges grounding you against the chaos. You're Horus Kid, but this banquet's a battlefield, and one misstep could cost you everything. You ascend to a raised dais, your throne draped in leopard skins, its golden claws glinting menacingly in the torchlight. The hall is a riot of color nobles in vibrant linens, priests in stark white robes, and Nefertari, your great royal wife, at your side, her presence a quiet but undeniable force. Servants glide through the crowd offering platters piled with dates, pomegranates, and intricately shaped lotus flower breads. Mainstream history tells us pharaohs hosted such lavish feasts to cement alliances and flaunt their wealth, often draining treasuries for a single night's display of power. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some banquets featured funerary cakes, pastries molded into the shape of mummies, as a nod to Osiris, a morbid reminder of the afterlife amid the revelry. You spot a tray of them, their icing eerily lifelike, and a chill runs through you, sharper than the desert night. Historians still argue whether these feasts were genuine moments of unity or elaborate facades hide in political traps. The way Ptahhotep's eyes lock onto you from across the hall, his smile too wide, screams traps loud and clear. Nefertari leans close, her perfume sharp with jasmine, and whispers a warning about a noble's rumored ties to Nubian rebels, a piece of intelligence that cuts through the music's lilt. Her words are a gift, but her gaze keen as the turquoise dagger Lady Nebet, gifted you in court, reminds you of the harem's rivalries. She's not just your wife, she's a player in this game, and her loyalty is as layered as the noble's schemes. You nod your eyes, scanning the crowd. Ptahhotep raises a golden cup in your honor, his grin almost theatrical, while Nebwenef, the high priest, stands nearby, his ram-headed staff, a silent claim to divine authority. You return the toast, your voice steady as you praise the two lands, but your gut twists with unease. Every gesture here is a calculated move, and you're not sure if you're the king or the pawn on this gilded chessboard. Lady Nebet approaches her turquoise dagger, now tucked prominently in her belt, a gleaming trophy of her courtly ambition. She praises your campaign with honeyed words, her voice smooth as the Nile surface, but then she pivots, suggesting more troops for her gnome's border to secure the trade routes. It's a power grab, thinly veiled as concern for Egypt's safety, and you feel the trap closing. You deflect, promising to consult your generals, a tactic you learned from your mother's playbook. Promise much, deliver little. You quip to yourself that even gods need a diplomacy coach to navigate this mess, but Nebet's sharp smile says she sees through your dodge. The music swells, and dancers sweep in their veils, catching the torchlight like moths. But you catch Ptahhotep whispering to a priest, their heads bent too close for comfort. Are they plotting an alliance or just sharing the wine? You file it away alongside Ankas's Memphis rumor from the harem and the vizier's sly glance from court. The feast grows louder, cups clinking, laughter rising like a tide, but the undercurrent remains tense, a river ready to overflow. A servant offers you a plate of honeyed quail, its aroma rich and tempting, but you hesitate, the specter of poisoned drink, rumors from court lingering in your mind. You eat anyway, the sweetness cloying on your tongue, and Nefertari's hand brushes yours, a subtle reassurance, or perhaps a reminder of her influence in this hall. You think of the mummified cats offered to basket the funerary cakes on the table, and wonder if this feast is just another ritual dressing up death in decadence. You raise your cup again, toasting the glory of Egypt, and the crowd roars in response. But their eyes remain fixed on you, weighing every word, every glance for signs of weakness. A young noble Amenemhat steps forward, his sister, the one he boldly proposed as a harem candidate at his side. He presents a golden falcon statue, its wings spread wide, a nod to your Horus title. His speech drips with ambition, hinting at his family's unwavering loyalty if you elevate their status, perhaps through his sister's marriage. You accept the statue, its weight cool and heavy, as you tuck it beside your amulets, and promise to consider his generous offer with the gravity it deserves. His sister's eyes meet yours, bold and calculating, and you feel Nefertari stiffen beside you, her fingers tightening on her cup. Another trap, another thread woven into the harem's intricate web. You quip under your breath that even gods need a flowchart to track these alliances, but the music's rising tempo drowns out the thought. Nebuenef approaches next, his voice as smooth as polished alabaster, praising your piety and the gold you offered to Ptah's temple. But he quickly pivots, nudging for additional funds to expand Amun's shrine, echoing his sanctum request with a priestly finesse that masks his greed. You nod vaguely, recalling your mother's warning about his growing influence, a shadow creeping through the nobles' ranks. You counter with a proposal for a festival to honor Amun, a crowd-pleasing spectacle that buys you time without committing your treasury. Nebuenef bows, his eyes glinting with something unreadable disappointment perhaps, or a deeper calculation. You think of the sacred rams he trusts as oracles, and wonder if they'd offer clearer guidance than this room of schemers. The night deepens, the hall growing warmer, the air thick with wine perfume and unspoken deals. Your vizier hovers at the edge of the dais, murmuring names and alliances, his advice a lifeline, but also a leash, much like in the audience hall. A dancer stumbles near Ptahhotep, spilling wine across his robe, and he laughs it off with a charm that doesn't reach his eyes. You catch his glance at Nebet, brief, but pointed, and your pulse quickens. Are they forging an alliance, or is he playing every side to keep you off balance? You signal for more music, hoping to shift the mood, and the flutes rise their notes, sharp and haunting, cutting through the haze. Historians note that pharaohs like Ramses II used feasts to unify fractious nobles. But you're learning that unity is a myth when everyone's carving their own slice of Egypt's power. Your mother slips into the hall late, her presence calming the crowd like a breeze over the Nile. But her eyes find yours, sharp with warning. She leans close, whispering that Ptahhotep's been seen with Nubian envoys, a detail that twists the knife of Nefertari's earlier intelligence. You nod your fingers, brushing the falcon statue, its weight adding to the amulet's burden. The banquet feels like a gilded cage, and you're both the prize and the prey, caught in a web of flattery and deceit. You quip to yourself that even gods need a trap detector to survive this night, but the thought sours, drowned by the clink of cups and the dancers' swirling veils. As the feast winds down, you rise, signaling its end, and the crowd bows their faces, a mosaic of flattery, cunning, and barely veiled hunger. Nefertari stands with you, her hand lingering on yours, a reminder of her primacy, but also her stake in this game. You step into the cool corridor, the amulets clinking softly, and your mother follows her voice low as she urges you to watch Ptahhotep closely. His ties to the priests, and now the Nubians, could unravel your reign. The Nile's faltering, the gods are restless, and the banquet has only deepened the fault lines, cracking through your court. You're due to judge disputes in the desert tomorrow, and the nobles' schemes will sharpen with every step you take. You clutch the amulets, the reed boat a fragile echo of the village child's faith, and wonder if you can outmaneuver this feast of lies. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid, wading through a sea of ambition, praying your divine mask holds until dawn. The banquet's cloying wine and veiled threats still linger. As you're roused before dawn, the desert's chill seeping through your linen cloak as you're led to a sun-scorched plateau to judge criminals under the unrelenting gaze of Ra. The air smells of dust and fear, and the crowd villagers, soldiers, and nobles watches from a distance, their murmurs a low hum like the Nile's pulse. You're here to deliver justice, a divine duty that binds the two lands, but every verdict risks alienating allies or igniting unrest. The nobles' schemes, Ptahhotep's whispers, Nebet's dagger loom in your mind, and the priest's demands weigh heavier than the amulets, clay scarab, reed ram, and falcon clinking at your belt. You're Horus, kid, but today, you're judge and jury, and the desert doesn't forgive mistakes. You stand on a raised platform, a canopy shielding you from the sun's glare, though sweat already beads under your double crown. Before you kneel 3 prisoners, their wrists bound with rough cord, a thief who stole temple grain, a soldier accused of deserting your recent campaign, and a merchant caught bribing an official. Their eyes pleading, defiant, resigned, meet yours, and you feel the weight of their fates heavier than the pyramid stones. Mainstream history tells us pharaohs acted as supreme judges, their verdicts seen as divine will to maintain Ma'at, the cosmic balance. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some trials included oracular judgments, where priests interpreted a statue's movements to decide guilt, a practice as sketchy as a noble's smile. You glance at a nearby priest, his staff topped with Anubis's jackal head, and hope he keeps his statues out of this. Historians still argue whether pharaohs judged personally or relied on officials to enforce Ma'at. The crowd's expectant hush says you're the one they're watching, and there's no passing the scroll. Your vizier, his sly glance from court, still fresh hands you a papyrus listing the charges. You start with the thief, a gaunt man with trembling hands. He stole to feed his family. He claims his voice cracking as he begs for mercy. The priest shifts, muttering about temple sacrilege, while a noble Nebet's cousin, you note, suggests a harsh penalty to deter others. You think of the low Nile, the empty granaries, and the villagers' desperate faces. Starving families aren't criminals, but defying the temple could embolden Ptahhotep's allies. You order the thief to work off his debt in the temple fields, a compromise that spares his life, but satisfies the priest. The crowd murmurs, some nodding, others frowning, and you quip to yourself that even gods need a law degree to please everyone. The thief's relieved sob is drowned by the wind. Next is the soldier, his scarred face defiant despite his chains. He deserted during your desert campaign, fleeing when a raider's spear nearly took him. General Ka, standing nearby, urges death to maintain discipline, his voice hard, but his eyes conflicted. You recall the campaign's chaos, the fly amulet, the blood-soaked sand, and feel a flicker of sympathy. A dead soldier won't fight for you, but leniency could weaken your army's resolve. You question him, and he admits fear, not treason, drove him. You sentence him to a year of hard labor in the quarries, a punishment historians note pharaohs like Thutmose III used to reform rather than destroy. Ka nods, but Nebit's cousin whispers to a scribe, and you sense the nobles taking notes. Your mercy might be a crack in your armor. The merchant's case is trickier. He bribed an official to secure a trade contract, a crime that smells of Ptah-hotep's scheming. The merchant smug, expecting leniency. His wealth lines noble pockets, after all. The vizier leans close, suggesting exile to avoid upsetting allies. But you catch his hesitation, as if he's protecting someone. You think of Nefertari's warning about Nubian ties, and wonder if this merchant's part of a bigger web. You order his goods seized, and banish him to a border outpost, a verdict that sends a message no one's above Ma'at, not even the rich. The crowd gasps, and Nebit's cousin stiffens his eyes, darting to Ptah-hotep across the plateau. You've just stirred the viper's nest, and it feels both right and reckless. The sun climbs higher, its heat a hammer on your crown. The priest steps forward, offering a prayer to Ma'at, and you sprinkle sand on a small altar, sealing your verdicts with divine approval. The act feels hollow, like the hymns you stumbled through in the temple. You're supposed to embody justice, but each choice feels like a gamble. Mercy for the thief, reform for the soldier, exile for the merchant. The crowd watches, their faces a mix of awe and judgment, and you wonder if they see Horus or just a kid trying not to falter. You quip to yourself that even gods need a gavel, but the desert silence swallows the thought. Your mother appears, her golden sandals kicking up dust, and murmurs approval of your balance, mercy tempered with strength. But she warns that Ptah-hotep will twist your leniency into weakness, especially the thief's light sentence. You nod, clutching the falcon amulet, its sharp edges, a reminder of the banquet's gifts and dangers. The noble's whispers grow louder as they disperse, and you catch Ptah-hotep's gaze, his smile too smooth. He's already spinning your verdicts into a narrative, one that could undermine you before the next flood. A child from the crowd, bolder than the rest, darts forward, offering a tiny reed basket woven with care. You take it, tucking it beside the reed boat, and smile, though your heart's heavy. These small tokens, the clay, the scarab, the ram, pile up, each a thread of faith you're expected to weave into divinity. But faith feels fragile when nobles plot and priests loom. You thank the child, your voice steady, and she beams, unaware of the storm brewing in your court. As you descend the platform, the prisoners are led away, their fates sealed, but your doubts growing. The vizier hovers, offering to draft decrees, but his eagerness feels like another leash. You think of the oracular statues, and wonder if a stone god would judge better than you. The desert stretches endless, its dunes indifferent to your verdicts, and you envy their freedom unbound by justice or crowns. Your mother walks beside you, her silence a rare comfort, but even she can't shield you from the noble's next move. The palace awaits its cool halls, a brief respite before tomorrow's envoys arrive. Ptah-hotep's name floats in the air, tied to whispers of instability and temple alliances. The Nile's low, the gods are silent, and your justice feels like a bandage on a wound too deep to heal. You quip to yourself that even gods need a day off from playing judge, but the thought's bitter. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid, balancing Ma'at on a knife's edge, hoping the two lands don't tip before you do. The desert's harsh judgments still burn in your mind as you're escorted to a gilded pavilion overlooking the Nile, where foreign envoys wait to test your diplomatic prowess. The air's heavy with lotus, and the river's earthy tang, but the tension's thicker than the banquet hall's intrigue. You're here to negotiate with outsiders, Hittites, Nubians, and Libyans, each eager to exploit Egypt's weaknesses like the faltering Nile or whispers of unrest. The noble's schemes, Ptahhotep's slick smiles, Nebit's dagger, and the priest's demands weigh on you heavier than the amulets, clay scarab reed, ram fulcon, and now a tiny reed basket clinking at your belt. You're Horus, kid. But these envoys aren't here to worship. They're here to probe, and one wrong word could unravel the two lands. You settle on a cedar throne, its carvings of cobras gleaming under the sun's glare, and survey the envoys. The Hittite ambassador, a bearded man named Hattusil, stands tall, his bronze armor polished to a mirror's sheen. Beside him, a Nubian envoy. Kesh bows deeply, his gold earrings catching the light, while a Libyan chieftain, wiry and weathered, eyes you with barely veiled disdain. Servants offer wine and figs, but the gestures feel hollow, a thin veil over the real stakes, trade routes, tribute, and Egypt's strength. Mainstream history tells us pharaohs like Ramses II used diplomacy to secure peace, often through marriages or treaties, like the famous Hittite Accord. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some envoys brought exotic gifts, like cheetahs or ostriches to curry favor, believing they'd dazzle Egypt's court. You spot a caged falcon near Hattusil and smirk, wondering if it's meant to mock your Horus title. Historians still argue whether pharaohs negotiated as equals or masked Egypt's vulnerabilities with grandeur. The envoys' sharp gazes suggest they're betting on the latter, and you're determined to prove them wrong. Hattusil speaks first, his voice smooth but edged, offering a trade deal Hittite iron for Egyptian grain. It sounds fair, but you know the catch. Your granaries are strained from the low flood, and given too much could starve your people. You lean forward, thanking him for the offer, and counter with a request for Hittite horses, instead a resource your army needs. His eyes narrow, but he nods intrigued. You quip to yourself that even gods need to haggle, but the thought's drowned by Kesh's sudden offer, Nubian gold for protection against desert raiders. It's a subtle jab your recent campaign didn't fully secure the south, and he knows it. You promise patrols echoing your battlefield orders, but keep the terms vague, a trick you learned, dodging Ptahhotep's quarry grab. The Libyan chieftain less polished cuts in demanding access to Nile ports for his traders. His tone's blunt, almost insolent, and you catch Nefertari's frown from the sidelines. She's here, her presence a silent anchor. You recall her warning about Nubian ties, and wonder if this Libyan's boldness is tied to Ptahhotep's whispers. You deflect, offering limited port access in exchange for tribute, and his scowl deepens. The crowd nobles scribes, and your vizier watches their murmurs a low buzz. You feel their eyes judging your youth against your crown, and grip the reed basket, its delicate weave, a reminder of the village child's faith. The negotiations drag on, each envoy probing for weakness. Hattusil mentions Egypt's challenges with the Nile, a veiled reference to your faltering harvest, and suggests a marriage alliance with a Hittite princess. You think of the harem's rivalries, Nefertari's sharp gaze, Ankhis's cunning and hesitate. A new wife could strengthen ties, but spark chaos at home. You smile, promising to consider it, and quip to yourself that even gods need a bigger palace for all these brides. Hadassil's grin doesn't reach his eyes, and you know he's tallying your hesitations. Kesh shifts tactics, offering a gift, a Nubian bow inlaid with ivory, and praises your campaign, but his words feel like a test. You accept the bow, its weight solid in your hands, and thank him, but your mind's on the merchant you exiled yesterday. His Nubian ties a warning you can't ignore. You counter with a request for more gold tribute, framing it as a gesture of mutual strength. Kesh nods, but his earrings glint as he tilts his head, calculating. The Libyan chieftain grows restless, muttering about his tribe's loyalty if you grant more ports. You sense a trap open the ports too wide, and Egypt's trade could bleed out. You repeat your offer firmer now, and he backs down, but his glare promises trouble. Your vizier leans close, his breath warm with wine, suggesting you invite the envoys to a festival to cement bonds. It's a sound idea echoing your mother's banquet strategy, but his tone feels off like he's steering you toward a cliff. You nod, keeping your face neutral, and think of Nebwenef's ram amulet, another leash disguised as a gift. The envoy's words swirl iron gold ports brides, and you feel the two lands slipping through your fingers like sand in the desert where you judged the thief. A priest steps forward, offering a prayer to Thoth, god of wisdom, to bless the talks. You sprinkle incense on a small altar, its smoke curling like your doubts. The act's supposed to show divine favor, but it feels hollow, like the hymns you fumbled in Ta's temple. You think of the oracular statues from your judgments, their movements as staged as this diplomacy. Do the gods care about your deals, or are you bargaining with shadows? The envoys watch their faces unreadable, and you wonder if they see Horus or just a kid in a heavy crown. Nefertari touches your arm, her gesture subtle but grounding, and whispers that the Libyan's demands align with Tahatep's interests. Her insight's a lifeline, but it also reminds you of the harem's stakes. She's protecting her place as much as Egypt's. You nod, filing her warning next to your mother's about Tahotep's Nubian ties. The pavilion grows warmer, the sun climbing, and sweat beads under your kilt. You signal a break, offering the envoys wine and shade, and they relax, but their eyes never leave you. The falcon in its cage screeches, and you quip to yourself that even gods need a quieter negotiator. The sound's lost in the crowd's hum. Your mother joins you, as the envoys mingle, her eyes scanning the scene like a general reading a battlefield. She warns that Tahotep's absence today is no coincidence. He's likely plotting with the priests, or worse. You clutch the Nubian bow, its ivory cool against your palm, and nod, feeling the weight of every choice. The Nile's low, the noble scheme, and now these envoys circle each deal a thread in a web that could choke your reign. You're due to honor sacred animals tomorrow, another divine duty, and the priests will be watching, ready to pounce on any weakness. You quip to yourself that even gods need a diplomat's handbook, but the thought's bitter, drowned by the river's distant murmur. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid navigating a world where every ally's a threat, praying your mask holds against the tide. The envoy's sharp words still sting as you're led at dawn to a sprawling temple complex dedicated to Bastet, where the air hums with the musky scent of cats and the low rhythmic chants of priests. You're here to honor Egypt's sacred animals, cats, crocodiles, falcons, whose divine status weaves the people's faith into your reign. But the rituals teeter on the edge of absurdity, like a noble's flattery. The Nile's faltering flood, Hotep's banquet schemes, and the envoy's veiled threats weigh on you heavier than the amulets, clay scarab reed, ram falcon, and now a tiny reed basket clinking at your belt. The priest's eyes as piercing as Nefertari's in the harem track. Your every move, and you know this is another test of your divine mask. You're Horus, kid, but wrangling sacred beasts feels like herding cats in a sandstorm, and one wrong step could unleash divine or human wrath. You step into a sunlit courtyard where a towering bronze statue of Bastet looms her feline head, crowned with a golden disc that glints like Ra's own glare. Cats sprawl across the warm stones, their eyes glinting with lazy arrogance, while priests scatter offerings of milk and fish, their movements precise as a scribe's brush. A caged falcon screeches nearby, its cry as sharp as the Hittite envoy's trade demands, and in a distant pen, a crocodile's jaws snap at a handler's stick, sending a shiver down your spine. Mainstream history tells us Egyptians revered animals as avatars of the gods, with cats sacred to Bastet, believed to guard homes from evil spirits. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some temples bred thousands of cats, mummifying them as offerings, their tiny sarcophagi, stacked like morbid keepsakes in crypts. You spot a row of them along a wall, their painted eyes staring blankly, and shudder, recalling the mummified cats from Ptah's temple. Historians still argue whether these rituals were heartfelt devotion or a priestly scheme to swell temple coffers. The high priest, Sekhmet Hotep, fixes you with a gaze that suggests it's both, and you brace for a performance where faith and power collide. Sekhmet Hotep, his robes embroidered with intricate cat motifs, bows low, but the flourish feels as staged as Ptah Hotep's banquet toast. He urges you to offer a gift to Bastet, a golden collar studded with lapis lazuli to secure her favor for the faltering harvest. The request drips with piety, but his eyes glint with the same greed you saw in Nebuenef's shrine, demands a hunger for temple wealth that rivals the nobles. You nod, stepping forward to place the collar on the altar, its weight cool in your hands, but you counter with a proposal to share temple grain with starving farmers, tying Bastet's blessing to the people's survival. Sekhmet Hotep's smile tightens a crack in his holy facade, and you quip to yourself that even gods need to negotiate with cat ladies. The priest's chants rise their rhythm, as relentless as the Nile's current, drowning your fleeting humor. You're led to the Falcon enclosure, where a priest hands you a wriggling mouse to feed a sacred bird, Horus's own avatar. The falcon's talons snatch it with brutal precision, and you wince, feeling too much like the mouse in this temple's game of power. The priests claim this act strengthens your divine essence, but you're reminded of the fly amulet, clutched by the desert raider faith in small things as fragile as your own resolve. You sprinkle incense over a brazier, muttering a prayer to Horus, but your voice wavers, echoing the hymn you fumbled in Ptah's temple. Sekhmet Hotep's gaze sharpens, sniffing out doubt like a cat stalking prey, and you straighten, gripping the reed basket to hide your unease. You think of the oracular rams from Nebuenef's sanctum, and wonder if a falcon's screech would be any less manipulated. The crocodile pen awaits its air thick with the stench of mud and decay. A massive beast lounges in the murky water, its eyes like polished stones, and you're tasked with tossing at a fish an offering to Sobek, god of strength, and the Nile. The fish arcs through the air, and the crocodile's jaws snap, spray in water that soaks your sandals. The priests cheer, but you recall the crocodile claw you burned for Ptah, another eerie ritual in this divine circus that binds you to the gods' whims. You quip to yourself that even gods need hazard pay for wrangling reptiles, but Sekhmet Hotep's solemn nod smothers the humor. The crowd villagers, nobles, and your ever-present vizier watches their faces a blend of awe and expectation, as if you could command Sobek himself to raise the Nile. You're supposed to embody the god's will, but you feel like a performer, juggling beasts, priests, and politics under Ra's unforgiving gaze. Sekhmet Hotep shifts gears, presenting a papyrus petitioning for more land to expand Bastet's sanctuary, a move to boost the temple's influence. It's a power grab, cloaked in devotion, and you sense Ptah Hotep's shadow. His name's been tied to temple donations, a thread in the web of noble priest alliances. You deflect, promising to review the request with your council, a tactic you used with the Hittite envoy's trade deal. Sekhmet Hotep's eyes narrow, and you know you've earned another rival his ambition, as sharp as Nebet's dagger. You think of Nefertari's warning about Nubian ties, and wonder if the priests are weaving a net with the nobles, one that could ensnare your throne. The falcon screeches again, its cry cutting through the chants, and you grip the reed basket, its delicate weave, a faint echo of the village child's faith amid this sea of schemes. A young priestess approaches her steps, soft as a cat's, and offers a tiny amulet, a cat's head carved in ebony, its eyes tiny emeralds that catch the light. You tuck it beside the ram amulet, its weight another thread in your growing collection of tokens, each a reminder of the faith you're expected to carry. Her smile is genuine, a rare spark of warmth, but Sekhmet Hotep's gaze feels heavy as the pyramid stones, pressing you to perform. You ask about the people's devotion to Bastet, probing for weaknesses in the temple's hold, and he boasts of packed festivals and fervent prayers. But his quick glance away mirrors Nebwenef's evasion about Memphis unrest. You file it away next to the vizier's sly glance, the Libyan's bold demands, and Ankas's sharp intelligence from the harem. The ritual stretches on with a procession to honor Sobek. You lead a chant, tossing more fish into the pen, and the crocodile's thrash sends the crowd gasping, a spectacle meant to show your command over nature's might. But you feel like the fish are dangling before jaws, priests, nobles, gods all waiting to snap. The low Nile, the banquet's traps, the mummification rites swirl in your mind, each a reminder that your divinity is a performance, not a truth. You quip to yourself that even gods need a break from playing zookeeper. But the priests' chants rise a tide, pulling you under their voices as unyielding as the desert's heat. Your mother meets you as you leave the temple, her eyes scanning the dispersing crowd, like a hawk circling prey. She warns that Sekhmet Hotep's influence is entwined with Ptah Hotep's, their combined power, a growing threat that could choke your reign. You nod your fingers, brushing the cat amulet, its emerald eyes cold against your palm. The temple's rituals have left you drained their weight, as oppressive as the desert's judgments or the envoy's demands. You're due to consult astrologers tomorrow, another divine duty, where priests and nobles will circle ready to exploit any falter. The Nile's low, the gods are fickle, and the sacred animals feel like another leash tightening around your neck. You clutch the reed basket, its fragile weave a whisper of the village child's faith, and wonder if it's enough to anchor you. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid, dodging the claws of divine wrath and human ambition, praying your mask holds against the storm. The temple's musky air and the weight of sacred cats, crocodiles, and falcons still cling to you like desert dust as you're guided under a star-flecked sky to a rooftop observatory where astrologers await to unravel the heavens' cryptic omens for your reign. The night's cool breath slices through the desert's lingering heat, mingling with the faint smoky myrrh from a brazier, and the Nile's earthy tang, a scent that grounds you even as your nerves hum. You're here to consult the stars, a divine duty meant to decode cosmic signs that could sway the nobles' priests, and perhaps the gods themselves. The low floods threat, Tahotep's banquet schemes, and the harem's tangled rivalries press on you, heavier than the amulets. Clay scarab reed, ram falcon reed, basket, and now a cat clinking at your belt, their edges worn from your restless grip. Your Horus kid. But the stars don't kneel, and their silent judgments could unravel your throne faster than any noble's whisper or priest's demand. Better brace yourself, this cosmic council's no bedtime story. You climb a narrow stone staircase, the steps cool under your sandals, to an open platform where constellations glitter like a half-read scroll of divine will. The chief astrologer Menkeper greets you with a bow, his stooped frame draped in a linen robe stitched with silver stars, his eyes sharp as the khopesh you wielded in battle. Assistants bustle around, scribbling on papyrus with reed pens, tracking celestial paths, while bronze instruments, astrolabes, and star clocks gleam in the flickering torchlight, their shadows dancing like restless spirits. Mainstream history tells us Egyptian astrologers were revered their star alignments, guiding pharaohs on everything from harvests to wars, shaping state decisions with celestial authority. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some astrologers claimed Sirius's rising signaled the Nile's flood, occasionally fudging dates to flatter a pharaoh's reign, as if the stars could be bribed like a noble. You glance at Menkeper, wondering if he's cooking the cosmic books, and stifle a smirk. Imagine the paperwork for that. Historians still argue whether pharaohs like you truly trusted these star readers or used their predictions as political props to pacify schemers like Tahotep. Menkeper's piercing gaze suggests he knows the stakes his omens could shift the court's fragile balance, and your faith in him is a lever he's itching to pull. He points to Orion, its belt blazing low on the horizon, and declares it a sign of enduring strength for your rule, his voice steady but laced with a cautious edge. When he mentions Sirius, still days from rising, his tone falters, and you press him on its timing, the Nilometer's dry steps burning in your memory like a bad omen. Menkeper hedges, murmuring about divine rhythms and celestial cycles, his words as slippery as the vizier's sly glance in court. You quip to yourself that even gods need a better weatherman to predict the Nile's mood, but the thought's drowned by the assistants' pausing pens, their eyes catching your flicker of doubt. Skepticism's a risk astrologers wield influence, and their words could embolden Tahotep's whispers or fuel Nebwenef's priestly ambitions. You nod, keeping your face as blank as a temple statue, and ask for a precise prediction on the harvest, hoping to pin him down. Menkeper consults a star chart, his fingers tracing intricate lines, like a scribe plotting a trap, and predicts a modest yield if offerings to Hapi are doubled. It's a safe answer, but it reeks of priestly pressure, echoing Sekhmet Hotep's grain, demands at Bastet's temple, and you wonder if the stars are just another leash. You're handed a bronze disc etched with constellations, its surface cool and heavy in your hands, and told to align it with the horizon, a ritual to bind your fate to the stars' will. The disc feels like another amulet, another weight tying you to a divine role that's starting to feel like a costume. You align it carefully, chanting a prayer to Thoth, god of wisdom, but your voice catches echoing the hymn you fumbled in Ta's temple weeks ago. Menkeper's eyebrow twitches a silent jab at your faltering divinity, and you grip the cat amulet, its emerald eyes glinting in the torchlight like a warning. The stars are supposed to guide you, but they feel as distant as the gods, and you recall the fish amulets, farmers tossed into the Nile, desperate gestures of faith in forces as fickle as this court. You quip to yourself that even gods need a cosmic GPS to navigate this starry mess, but the night's heavy silence swallows the humor, leaving only the weight of expectation pressing down. The ritual shifts to a small altar where you burn myrrh, its smoke curling upward like a question mark against the starry expanse, twisting into shapes that seem to mock your doubts. Menkeper interprets a faint star's flicker as a warning of unrest in the north, a vague omen that pricks your ears. Ankhis's rumor of Memphis unrest surfaces, tying to Ptahhotep's banquet whispers and Nefertari's warning about Nubian ties. You press him, asking if the stars point to rebellion, your voice sharper than intended, but he deflects, citing cosmic ambiguity with a practiced ease that mirrors the vizier's evasions. You wonder if the astrologers are in league with the priests or nobles, weaving a net as tight as the one you felt in the harem. You nod, feigning acceptance, but file the hint away next to the Libyan envoy's bold port demands and the low Nilometer's silent accusation. A young assistant, her eyes bright with unguarded awe, approaches with a tiny star-shaped amulet, its turquoise surface catching the moonlight like a frozen drop of the Nile. You tuck it beside the reed basket, its delicate weave a faint echo of the village child's faith, and thank her, your voice steady despite the doubt gnawing at your core. Menkeper watches his expression unreadable, and you feel the weight of his influence as heavy as Nebwenef's ram-headed staff or the pyramid's unyielding stones. The stars may guide Egypt's fate, but the astrologers shape the story, and you're caught in their orbit, just like with the sacred animals or the Hittite envoy's trade talks. The observatory grows colder, the night deepening, as Menkeper leads you to a bronze tube, a telescope-like device aligned with Sirius. You peer through it, the star a mere pinprick of light against the vast dark, and he murmurs about its promise of renewal, a hopeful note that rings hollow against the Nile's stubborn betrayal. You think of the mummification rites, the canopic jars waiting to cradle your organs, and wonder if the stars care about your ka any more than the river does. You quip to yourself that even gods need a better horoscope to face this rain's chaos, but Menkeper's solemn drone drowns the thought, his voice a relentless chant, binding you to the ritual's weight. The session stretches on with Menkeper pointing out lesser stars, each tied to vague omens, prosperity, caution, balance, that feel like priestly platitudes. You nod your mind, drifting to the banquet's traps. The crocodiles snap the low Nilometer steps, each a thread in the web tightening around you. You ask about the northern unrest again, probing for clarity, but he offers only more ambiguity, his words as slippery as the sacred ram's oracles. The assistants' pens scratch softly, and you feel their eyes judging your youth against the double crown's weight. The stars are supposed to be your allies, but they feel like judges as indifferent as the nobles or priests. Your mother meets you as you descend the torchlit stairs, her silhouette sharp against the flickering stone. She warns that Menkaper's predictions are rippling through the court, fueling Ptahhotep's whispers of northern unrest and eroding your grip on the noble's loyalty. Her eyes scan you, searching for cracks in your divine mask, and you nod, clutching the star amulet, its edges biting into your palm alongside the cat's emerald gaze. The priests, nobles, and now astrologers form a suffocating web, and you're due to face a plague outbreak tomorrow, another divine test that could break you. The Nile's low, the gods are silent, and the stars offer no clear path, only cryptic warnings that feel like another leash. You clutch the reed basket, its fragile weave a whisper of the village child's faith, and wonder if it's enough to anchor you against this cosmic tide. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid staring at a sky that judges as harshly as any priest praying your mask holds against the weight of the heavens and the schemes below. The observatory's starry omens still weigh on you, their cryptic warnings swirling like myrrh smoke as you're roused at dusk and led through dusty village paths to confront a plague outbreak that threatens to shatter your reign. The air's thick with the sour stench of sickness and burning herbs, a grim contrast to the Nile's distant murmur, its low flood already starving the land. You're here to face this crisis, a divine test to prove your godhood can heal as well as rule. But the villagers' desperate eyes feel heavier than any noble scheme. The banquet's traps, Ptahhotep's whispers, and Menkaper's vague predictions cling to you, heavier than the amulets. Clay scarab reed, Ram falcon, reed, basket cat, and star, clinking at your belt, their edges worn from your restless grip. You're Horus, kid, but a plague doesn't bow to crowns, and the people's fear could topple you faster than any priest's demand or envoy's deal. Brace yourself. This isn't a battle you can win with a khopesh. You step into the village square, your linen cloak dusted with sand, and face a crowd of gaunt faces, their eyes hollow with desperation. Some clutching children too weak to stand. Healers in linen masks dart between tents, carrying bowls of natron and crushed herbs, while priests chant to Sekhmet, goddess of healing, and plague their voices a low wail that cuts through the evening's haze. Your vizier, his sly glance as ever-present as the Nile's mud, hovers nearby, whispering that the outbreak, fever sores, and death has claimed dozens, with more falling daily, spreading from this village to nearby fields. Mainstream history tells us pharaohs were expected to combat plagues through divine intervention, often funding healers or temples to restore Ma'at's cosmic balance and quell unrest. But here's the quirky tidbit: some healers smeared crocodile fat on sores, believing it channeled Sobek's strength to fight disease, a remedy as wild as the crocodile claw you burned for Ptah. You wrinkle your nose, hoping the healer's salves are less grim than that ritual. Historians still argue whether pharaohs personally oversaw plague responses or delegated to priests and officials to maintain their divine aura. The crowd's pleading stares, raw and unyielding, say they expect you, the god king, to fix this, and there's no dodging their faith, no matter how heavy it feels. A healer, a wiry woman named Meritseeger, kneels before you, her hands stained with herb paste, her voice trembling as she reports the plague spread, now threatening the granaries where workers toil. She begs for more supplies, linen barley medicines, and divine prayers to soothe Sekhmet's fiery wrath. You nod, promising to open royal stores, a move historians note pharaohs like Amenhotep III used to calm crises and prevent rebellion. But Meretseeger's eyes linger, searching for the god behind your double crown, and you feel the weight of her hope heavier than the pyramid stones you inspected weeks ago. You quip to yourself that even gods need a medical degree to tackle this mess, but the villagers' hacking coughs drown the humor, their fear a tangible force pressing against your chest. You're led to a makeshift infirmary, a tent filled with the moans of the sick, their bodies swathed in sweat-soaked linens, the air so stifling it clogs your throat. You clutch the star amulet, its turquoise cool against your palm, and pause at a child's cot, her feverish face no older than the village girl who gave you the reed basket. Her mother sobs, clutching your hand, and you murmur a prayer to Sekhmet, your voice steady despite the knot tightening in your chest. The mother's eyes meet yours, brimming with desperate faith, and you think of the reed boat, another token of trust you're struggling to carry. You order the healers to prioritize the young, a command that feels right, but frail against the plague's relentless grip, like trying to hold sand in a storm. A priest, his lion-headed pendant marking him as Sekhmet's devotee, steps forward, urging a grand offering, gold incense, and a sacrificial bull to calm her destructive fire. His tone mirrors Nebwenef's shrine demands in the Temple of Amun, and you sense Ptahhotep's shadow, his ties to the priests, weaving a dangerous web. You agree to the offering, but insist on a public healing festival, tying Sekhmet's favor to the people's survival, a tactic to shift focus from the priest's greed to your divine care. The priest bows, but his eyes narrow a flicker of resentment, and you quip to yourself that even gods need a PR team to spin a plague into piety. The crowd's murmurs swell some voices, hopeful others edged with doubt, and you feel their faith teetering like a reed in the Nile's sluggish current. You move to the village altar, a rough stone slab stained with ash and burned myrrh its smoke, curling upward like the doubts that plagued you under Menkeeper's starry gaze. The priest leads a chant, and you sprinkle natron, a gesture meant to purify the land, but it feels as hollow as the hymns you stumbled through in Ptah's temple. The villagers watch their faces, a mix of awe and fear, and you wonder if they see Horus or just a kid drowning in divine expectations. You think of the crocodile fat salve gross, but maybe no worse than your own desperate prayers to a goddess who seems to prefer chaos. You quip under your breath that even gods need a hazmat suit for this job, but the priest's relentless drone smothers the thought, his voice a tide pulling you under. Your vizier suggests isolating the sick to curb the plague spread, a practical move, but you catch his glance toward a noble in the crowd, Nebet's cousin, whispering to a scribe with a haste that smells of Ptahhotep's influence. Is he reporting to the scheming noble or playing his own game? You approve the isolation but add that healers must be fed from royal granaries, prioritizing the people over noble agendas. The vizier nods, but his hesitation echoes Menkeper's cosmic ambiguity, and you file it away next to Ankas's Memphis rumor, Nefertari's Nubian warning, and the Libyan envoy's bold demands. A village elder, his hands trembling with age and fear, approaches and offers a woven palm amulet, a simple charm to ward off Sekhmet's wrath. You tuck it beside the star amulet, its rough fibers kin to the reed basket's delicate weave, and thank him your voice steady, despite the weight of his faith pressing on you. The crowd parts as you move to inspect the water supply, suspecting fouled wells may fuel the plague's spread. The Nile's banks are muddy, its flow weak, and you order engineers to dig new channels, a costly move. But one historian's note, pharaohs used to show divine care in crises. The elder's eyes brighten a flicker of hope, but you feel Ptahhotep's shadow lurking, ready to twist your generosity into a sign of weakness. Your mother arrives, her golden sandals kicking up dust, and whispers that Ptahhotep's allies are spreading word that the plague is your fault, a divine failing to fuel their schemes. Her warning stings, echoing Menkaper's northern unrest omen, and you nod, clutching the palm amulet, its fibers sharp against your palm, alongside the cat's emerald gaze. The plague's a crisis you can't fight with a kopesh or a chant, and the noble's plots tighten like a noose around your reign. You're due to face sibling rivals tomorrow, another layer of betrayal waiting to surface, and the priests will be watching, ready to exploit any falter in your divine mask. You quip to yourself that even gods need a vaccine for court politics, but the village's moans and the herb's acrid smoke drown the humor. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid, wading through a sea of sickness and schemes, praying your mask holds against the plague's relentless tide, and the vipers circling your throne. The plague's sour stench and your mother's warning about Ptahhotep's schemes still haunt you as you're ushered into a private palace chamber, its walls adorned with vivid paintings of your divine ancestors, their eyes seeming to judge your every step. The air's thick with the warm scent of cedar and the sharp bite of myrrh, but the tension's heavier as you face your siblings, half-brothers and sisters, whose ambitions threaten your throne more than any noble's plot or plague's toll. The low Nile, the outbreak's grim spread, and Menkaper's cryptic omens weigh on you, heavier than the amulets. Clay scarab reed, ram falcon, reed, basket cat star, and now a woven palm clinking at your belt, their edges worn smooth by your restless fingers. You're Horus, kid, but family's no safe haven when every sibling's a rival, and their betrayals could cut deeper than the Hittite envoy's demands or Sekhmet Hotep's priestly gaze. Brace yourself. This is a battlefield where blood ties are just another trap, and you're fighting to keep your crown. You settle onto a cedar throne, its carved falcons glaring as fiercely as Nefertari's eyes. In the harem, their wings spread like a warning. Before you stand, 3 siblings, Amun-Her, your half-brother, broad-shouldered with a warrior's stance and a glint of ambition. Tai, your sister, her coal-lined eyes sharp with cunning that rivals Ptahhotep's. And young Khemosset, barely 12, his nervous gaze hiding a calculating spark. Your mother, the great royal wife, lingers at the chamber's edge, her presence a silent anchor, but even her strength can't shield you from this storm of familial intrigue. Mainstream history tells us sibling rivalries often destabilized Egyptian dynasties, with pharaohs like Ramses II navigating complex family politics to secure their heirs and maintain power. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some royal siblings were appointed as high priests or governors, a strategic move to buy their loyalty or keep them too busy to plot rebellion. You eye Amun-Her, wondering if a temple post would tame his hunger, and smirk good luck selling that to a warrior. Historians still argue whether pharaohs genuinely trusted their siblings or saw them as inevitable threats to the throne. Taiwai's piercing stare, cold as the turquoise dagger Nebet gifted in court suggests the latter, and you're not betting on family unity today. Amunher speaks first, his voice smooth but edged like a kopesh, praising your plague response with practiced flattery, before suggesting he lead a military expedition to secure the north, where Menkeper's starry omens hinted at unrest. It's a bold move cloaked in loyalty, but you catch the glint in his eyes. He's not just after glory. He wants power, maybe your throne. You recall Tahotep's whispers about northern instability at the banquet, and your mother's warning that he's tied to noble schemes. Is Amunher in his orbit, or carving his own path? You thank him, your tone measured, and counter with a plan to send General Ka, instead keeping your brother close, where you can watch him. Amunhor's jaw tightens a crack in his facade, and you quip to yourself that even gods need a family referee to keep the peace. Your mother's faint nod from the sidelines says you've dodged a blow, but the fight's only just begun. Tai steps forward, her linen gown shimmering like moonlight on the Nile, and offers a golden ankh pendant, a gift to strengthen your reign's divine favor. Her words drip with honey, but she pivots subtly, pushing for a governorship in Memphis, where Ancus's rumor of unrest still lingers like a bad omen. You take the ankh, tucking it beside the palm amulet, its gold cool against the woven fibers. But her suggestion smells like a power grab, a chance to build her own court, far from your reach. You deflect, saying Memphis needs a seasoned official, not a royal, a tactic. You learned dodging the Hittite envoy's marriage proposal. Tai's smile thins sharp as Nebet's dagger, and you feel the harem's rivalries echoing here, family's just another web. You quip under your breath that even gods need a sibling-proof throne to survive this. But T's eyes flicker to Amunher, and you sense an alliance forming a dangerous thread in the net Ptahhotep's weaving with the priests. Kamwaset the youngest speaks last, his voice trembling but earnest, offering to study under the priests of Thoth to serve your reign's wisdom. His ambition's quieter, but you catch his quick glance at T, as if seeking her approval, her pawn, or his own player. You praise his devotion, promising a place in Thoth's temple, a move to keep him occupied without granting real power, a tactic. Historians note pharaohs used to neutralize sibling threats, but Kamwaset's nervous fidgeting suggests he's not fully tamed his eyes too sharp for a boy of 12. You feel the weight of their ambitions heavier than the pyramid stones you inspected, and wonder if family's just another court to navigate, with daggers hidden in smiles. Your vizier, his sly glance as persistent as the Nile's mud, leans close, whispering that Amunher's been seen with Tahotep's allies, a detail that twists the knife of your mother's warning about noble priest conspiracies. You nod, keeping your face neutral, and ask your siblings about the people's faith in your rule, probing for weaknesses. Amunher boasts of the army's loyalty, Tai of Memphis's devotion, but Kamwaset's silence speaks loudest. He's watching learning like you in the harem's tangled web. You press Tai on the Memphis rumor, hoping to catch her off guard, but her quick deflection mirrors Menkeper's cosmic ambiguity, raising your suspicions higher. You file it away next to the Nubian envoy's ivory bow, the plague's grim toll, and Nefertari's warning about Tahotep's Nubian ties. A priest enters his staff, topped with Thoth's ibis head, and offers a prayer to seal your family's unity, a ritual as staged as the oracular rams in Nebwenef's temple. You burn incense, its smoke curling like the doubts that plagued you under Menkaper's starry gaze, and sprinkle natron, a gesture meant to purify your bond. But it feels hollow, like the hymns you stumbled through for Ta, as empty as the crocodile fat salve you hoped wasn't used on the plague's victims. The priest's chant rises, and you think of the oracular statues from your desert judgments, wondering if a bird's squawk would be more honest than this forced harmony. Your siblings bow their faces a mask of loyalty, but you feel their ambitions sharp as the kopish you wielded in battle. You quip to yourself that even gods need a family therapist to untangle this mess, but the priest's relentless drone drowns the humor, his voice a tide pulling you under. Your mother steps closer, her eyes scanning your siblings like a general reading a battlefield, her golden sandals silent on the stone. She whispers that T's Memphis bid is backed by Ptah-hotep, their alliance a dangerous thread, linking nobles and priests against your throne. You nod, clutching the Ankh pendant, its gold cold, against the palm amulet's rough fibers, a contrast as stark as your siblings' loyalty versus their ambition. The chamber grows, stifling the cedar's scent, cloying, and you signal the meeting's end, thanking your siblings with words as formal as Sekhmet Hotep's bow in Bastet's temple. They leave their sandal steps echoing down the corridor, and you feel the weight of their unspoken plans as heavy as the plague's moans or the pyramid's stones. You step into the torchlit corridor, the palace humming with whispers. Ptah-hotep's name surfaces again, tied to temple funds and northern plots, a poison spreading through your court. Your mother lingers, urging you to place spies in Memphis to watch T's moves, her voice low but sharp as a scribe's reed. The Nile's low, the plague rages, and now your siblings circle their betrayals, weaving a new layer in the court's intricate web. You're due to oversee a statue project tomorrow, another divine duty, where nobles and priests will watch for any crack in your divine mask. The amulets press against your side, the reed basket a fragile echo of the village child's faith, and you wonder if it's enough to hold you together against this tide of ambition. You quip to yourself that even gods need a vacation from family drama, but the thought's bitter, drowned by the palace's restless hum. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid facing a family that's more threat than blood, praying your throne survives their schemes, and the two lands don't crumble before dawn. The sting of your siblings' cunning, especially Ty's Memphis bid, and Amenher's bold grab for power, still smolders as you're led at dawn to a sprawling quarry under Ra's relentless glare, where masons carve a colossal statue meant to etch your name into eternity. The air's thick with limestone dust, and the rhythmic clang of chisels a pulse as unyielding as the Nile's faltering flow. You're here to oversee this monument, a towering likeness to outlast your reign, but the plague's shadow, Ptah-hotep's whispers, and the astrologer's vague omens weigh heavier than the stone itself. The amulets, clay scarab reed, ram falcon reed, basket, cat star palm, and ankh clink at your belt, their edges worn from your restless grip, grounding you in a world where every move feels like a gamble. You're Horus, kid, but crafting a legacy in stone is a heavy lift when nobles and siblings plot your fall. And this statue could be your triumph or your tomb. You stand on a creaking wooden platform, your coal-lined eyes squinting against the sun's harsh blaze as workers haul massive limestone blocks up ramps slick with sand. The statue looms half-finished, a seated figure, with your face stern, godlike, and impossibly distant from the kid you feel inside. The chief mason Hemiunu, a grizzled man with calloused hands, bows low, his eyes darting nervously as he unrolls a papyrus plan. It details the statue's proportions, its base aligned with the cardinal points to honor Ra, ensuring your divine presence endures. Mainstream history tells us pharaohs like Khufu commissioned colossal statues as propaganda, their towering forms unifying Egypt and proclaiming divine power across the two lands. But here's the quirky tidbit some masons hid: tiny carvings, falcons, ankhs, even crude jokes in statue bases as secret offerings to the gods, unseen by any pharaoh. You smirk, imagining a mason's cheeky doodle tucked beneath your stone feet, a rebellion as bold as the graffiti in your pyramid's hidden stones. Historians still argue whether these monuments were vain displays of ego or vital symbols to bind a fractious kingdom. Hemiunu's anxious glance says he's betting on your approval, and the crowd nobles, priests, villagers expects a god-king who delivers eternity, not a boy sweating under a crown. Hemiunu explains the statue's progress, his voice steady but strained, noting delays from the plague's toll on workers, their numbers thinned by fever and sores. You nod, the image of the village child's feverish face flashing in your mind, her mother's desperate eyes mirroring Hemiunu's. You ask about the workers' conditions, probing for truth, and he assures you they're fed barley, onions, and beer. But his quick glance away echoes the vizier's sly hesitations in court. You recall the pyramid's graffiti: "We love beer," and quip to yourself that even gods need a union rep to check on these guys. But the humor fades under the crowd's watchful eyes. Ptah-hotep's among the nobles, his smile as slick as his banquet toast, and you feel his gaze sharp as Ty's ambition, ready to twist any misstep. You order extra rations for the workers, a move historians note pharaohs used to boost morale and stave off unrest. But Hemiunu's stiff bow suggests he's hiding something, skimming supplies perhaps, or tied to Ptah-hotep's growing web of influence. You're led to the statue's massive base, where a priest of Ra, his golden robes, gleaming hands, you a golden chisel to carve your cartouche, binding your name to this monument for eternity. The chisel's heavy, its edge glinting like the khopesh you swung in the desert, and you etch the hieroglyphs with care, each stroke feeling like a signature on your own tomb. The act's final echoing the mummification rites, where your organs will rest in canopic jars, and you think of the low Nile, the plague's toll, Amun-Her's bold bid. The priest chants, his voice a low hum that vibrates in your chest, and you sprinkle incense, its smoke, curling like the doubts that plagued you under Menkaper's starry gaze. The crowd watches, their faces a mix of awe and expectation, and you wonder if they see Horus, or just a kid chiseling his fears into unyielding stone. You quip under your breath that even gods need a better signature to sign away eternity, but the priest's relentless drone drowns the humor, his voice, a tide pulling you under. A noble Nebit's cousin steps forward, his linen robe, as vibrant as his ambition, praising the statue's grandeur, but suggesting his gnome supply the final granite blocks, a bid for influence that reeks of Ptah-hotep's schemes. You deflect, claiming the quarry's granite is sacred to Ra, a dodge you learned from your mother's playbook when facing the Hittite envoy's marriage proposal. His eyes narrow, a flicker of resentment, and you feel T's Memphis plot echoing in his words. another thread in the noble priest web that threatens to choke your reign. You think of the Ankh pendant Ti gave you its gold, now warm against the palm amulet's rough fibers, and wonder if your siblings are whispering with these nobles, plotting a coup behind their flattery. You quip to yourself that even gods need a lie detector to sort out this court, but the thought's bitter, lost in the quarry's relentless clamor of chisels and shouts. Hemiunu guides you to a ramp where workers strain their chants, weary but rhythmic, hauling a massive block destined for your statue's shoulder. You pause watching a young laborer, his face gaunt like the plague-stricken child's, and order a rest day for the crew, a gesture to ease their burden and show divine care. The crowd murmurs approval, but Nebet's cousin whispers to a scribe, and you catch Ptahhotep's name in the air, another plot, brewing another jab at your youthful folly. You recall the low Nilometer steps, the crocodile-fat salve Amenhotep's northern ambitions, and feel the weight of every decision, each one, a chess move, in a game where you're both king and pawn, surrounded by vipers. Your mother joins you, her golden sandals kicking up dust, her eyes scanning the crowd like a falcon circling prey. She whispers that Ptahhotep's allies are spreading word that your statue's cost is draining the treasury, painting you as reckless to undermine your rule. Her warning stings, echoing Menkeper's northern unrest omen, and Ti's cunning, and you nod, clutching the Ankh pendant, its gold heavy against the palm's rough weave. You ask Hemiunu about the project's timeline, and he estimates years, a slow grind that mirrors your reign's endless battles. Nobles, priests, siblings, plagues. You approve extra guards for the quarry, citing bandit threats, a move to protect the workers and your legacy from sabotage. Historians note pharaohs like Ramses II used such projects to rally the people, but you feel the nobles' eyes ready to twist your ambition into arrogance, their whispers as sharp as Nefertari's harem gaze. A village boy bold as the one who gave you the reed basket darts through the crowd with a tiny stone falcon, its crude carving an earnest offering to your divine image. You tuck it beside the star amulet, its rough edges kin to the palm's weave, and thank him, your voice steady, despite the weight of his faith pressing on you. The crowd cheers a fleeting wave of support, but you feel Ptahhotep's gaze, his smile as slick as ever, and wonder if he's plotting with Ti or the priests weaving a net to trap you. The quarry's dust clogs your throat, and you think of the oracular rams, the crocodile's snap, the starry omens, all absurd rituals binding you to a divine role that feels more like a cage. You quip to yourself that even gods need a break from playing sculptor to their own legend, but the chisel's relentless clang smothers the humor, a reminder of the legacy you're carving under pressure. As you leave the quarry, your mother lingers, her voice low, as she warns that Ptahhotep's tied to the priests, their combined influence, a noose tightening around your throne. The palace awaits its torchlit halls, buzzing with whispers of overreach and youthful excess, Ptahhotep's poison spreading like the plague. You're due to prepare for your final days tomorrow, a grim duty that feels too near with every step. The Nile's low, the plague persists. Your siblings scheme, and this statue your bid for eternity feels like a gamble against time. The amulets press against your side, the stone falcon a new weight beside the reed basket's fragile weave, and you wonder if eternity's worth the cost of this relentless fight. You're Horus, you're Egypt, but you're also a kid, carving a legacy in stone, praying it doesn't crush you before it stands tall against the two lands' chaos. The quarry's choking dust, and your mother's warning about Ptahhotep's priestly alliances still cling to you like a second skin as you're led at twilight to a secluded temple chamber, its limestone walls carved with vivid scenes of Osiris shepherding souls through the underworld's shadowed gates. The air's thick with the smoky tang of myrrh and the faint, damp breath of the Nile, its stubbornly low flood, a constant jab at your reign's fragility. You're here to prepare for your final days, a solemn ritual to ensure your eternal soul journeys safely to the afterlife, a task that feels too close after the plague's grim toll, your siblings' betrayals, and the colossal statue's unyielding weight. The amulets: clay scarab reed, ram falcon, reed, basket cat, star palm, ankh, and stone falcon clink. Softly at your belt, their edges worn smooth by your restless fingers, anchoring you against the yawning void of mortality. You're Horus Kid, but staring into death's shadow makes even a god-king feel small, and the two lands' faith rests on your ability to cling to eternal hopes, even as doubt creeps in like sand through a cracked jar. You settle onto a low cedar stool, its intricate ankh carvings pressing into your back, like a reminder of the stakes. Eternity's no small prize. The high priest of Osiris, Annen, bows low his linen robe, stark against the chamber's flickering gloom. His eyes deep as the underworld itself, holding no warmth, only a relentless expectation. He gestures to a stone altar, where offerings freshly baked bread, a jug of wine, and a wilting lotus flower wait to bind your soul to the afterlife's elusive promise. Mainstream history tells us pharaohs prepared meticulously for death, commissioning elaborate tombs and rituals to secure their cause immortality, a process as critical as ruling the living to uphold their divine mandate. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some priests slipped honey-soaked scarabs into burial wrappings, believing the sweetness would bribe Osiris for a smoother passage to the field of reeds, a paradise of eternal peace. You glance at the scarab amulet from the noble's child nestled among your crowded collection and smirk. Hope it's not too sticky when you meet the gods. Historians still argue whether pharaohs like you embraced these rituals as spiritual truth or performed them as political necessity to maintain their divine aura. Annen's solemn stare, as unyielding as Ptahhotep's scheming smile, suggests he expects you to believe every syllable, but doubt gnaws at you sharper than Ty's cunning or the plague's fevered moans. Annen begins his voice a low resonant chant, reciting spells from the Book of the Dead to guide your Ka through the underworld's perils. Demons with flaming eyes, gates guarded by serpents, and Anubis's dreaded scale. He hands you a papyrus scroll, its hieroglyphs dense with promises of rebirth, and you're to read a passage aloud, a rehearsal for the eternal stage, where gods judge souls. Your voice wavers, echoing the hymns you stumbled through in Ptah's temple weeks ago, and Annen's lips tighten a silent jab at your faltering divinity. You think of the mummification rites, the canopic jars waiting to cradle your organs, and the statue's stern stone face, each a step toward this grim moment, each a weight heavier than the pyramid's blocks you inspected. You quip to yourself that even gods need a script for the afterlife, but the humor's lost in the chamber's heavy air, the myrrh's smoke curling upward like your spiraling doubts, twisting into shapes that seem to mock your fears. You're led to a small shrine, where a statue of Osiris looms his green-painted face, serene, yet unyielding, his flail and crook glinting in the dim torchlight like symbols of judgment. Annen instructs you to offer the lotus, its petals soft, but drooping, a fragile symbol of rebirth you're supposed to trust with your eternal soul. You place it carefully, your fingers brushing the cool stone, and murmur a prayer, but the words ring hollow, like the promises you made to the plague-stricken village, their feverish faces still haunting your dreams. The low Nile Tui's Memphis plot, Amunar's bold bid for power, and the plague's relentless toll swirl in your mind, and you wonder if Osiris cares about your faltering reign any more than Hapi cares about the flood's failure. Annen's chant rises, urging you to offer a lock of hair, a piece of your essence, to bind you to the god's will. You hesitate, the scissors in his hand, glinting like the golden chisel you used at the quarry, and recall the hair you surrendered to Ptah's temple, another fragment of you, claimed by this divine game. You let him snip the curl, falling into a brazier, its faint sizzle echoing your unease, and you quip under your breath that even gods need a better barber for eternity's sake. Annen's unwavering focus smothers the humor, his eyes demanding a flawless performance from a kid who's barely holding it together. The ritual shifts to a mock weighing of your heart, a rehearsal for Anubis's judgment against Ma'at's feather, the ultimate test of your soul's purity. Annen places a stone heart on a bronze scale, its balance tipping slightly, and you feel your real heart pound, heavy with doubts from the harem's rivalries, the battlefield's blood, Menkeper's starry warnings, and Tai's scheme and ambition. You're supposed to be pure, but Ptahhotep's plots, the vizier's sly glances, and the plague's moans taint your thoughts, like ink bleeding across papyrus. You sprinkle natron, a purifying gesture meant to cleanse your ka, but it feels as futile as the crocodile fat salve you hoped wasn't used on the village's sick. Annen's eyes bore into you, searching for cracks in your divine mask, and you wonder if your ka's ready for this test, or if you're just a kid playing at divinity under a god's unblinking stone-cold gaze. Your mother enters quietly, her golden sandals silent on the polished stone, and whispers that Ptahhotep's allies are spreading rumors that your statue's cost and the plague's toll prove your divine failing a narrative, Ti's likely fanning in Memphis with her governorship bid. Her warning stings echo in Menkeper's northern unrest omen, and Amunhur's bold grab for a military command, and you nod, clutching the stone falcon amulet, its crude edges sharp against the Ankh's polished gold. Annen presents a final offering, a small obsidian Ankh, its black surface cool to the touch to seal your preparation for the afterlife's journey. You tuck it beside the palm amulet, its weight another thread in your crowded collection of tokens, each a reminder of the faith you're expected to carry from village, children, to scheming nobles. You thank him, your voice steady, despite the fear creeping in like a desert chill, and feel the chamber's air grow heavier, the myrrh's scent cloying as if the underworld itself is pressing close around you. The ritual concludes in a star-lit courtyard, where Annen leads you to a wall painted with the field of reeds, the afterlife's paradise of swaying reeds and endless peace, its colors glowing softly in the torchlight. The painted reeds promise rest, but you think of the real Nile, its muddy, sluggish banks mocking your efforts to save the harvest from the low flood. You quip to yourself, that even gods need a better travel agent to book a spot in eternity. But the thought's bitter, drowned by Anand's final chant, his voice a low hum that binds you to this grim rehearsal for death. The crowd outside, priests, nobles, and your ever-present vizier waits their whispers, carrying Ptahhotep's name, tied to temple funds and northern plots, a poison spreading faster than the plague through your court. Your reign feels like it's unraveling thread by fragile thread, and this preparation for death feels like a surrender to a fate you can't outrun, no matter how many amulets you carry. As the temple's shadows dissolve, you step into the night's gentle embrace, the Nile's soft whisper, a soothing lullaby against the day's crushing weight. The amulets rest lightly against your side, each a quiet story of a child's hope, a noble's flattery, a priest's demand, a sibling's veiled threat. The stars above twinkle softly, no longer cold judges, but gentle companions, their glow easing the sharp edges of your fears. Your Horus, yes, but also a soul craving rest, and the two lands' burdens slip away like sand through open fingers. The plague, the plots, the statue's unyielding stone, they'll wait for dawn's harsh light. For now, the night wraps you in, calm the river's hum, a promise of fleeting peace. Let your eyes drift closed. Let the amulet's weight fade and sink into dreams where gods don't bear crowns, only starlight's tender glow. Sleep now, kid, and let eternity wait a little longer.